This is The Drive with Dale Lolley and Matt Williamson on your 24/7 home of the black and gold. SNR, Steelers Nation Radio.
And welcome back to the NFL Scouting Combine here in Indianapolis. I am Dale Lolley, taking over here in the captain's chair for Jerry Dulac. I'm here with, Matt Williamson and
Mr. Starks.
Mr. Starks. You get the Mr.
Here. Yeah, I get the Mr. now. I've now reached that age that you gotta say. Well, listen, it already gets bad enough when like the kids that are coming out like now were actually born, around the time that I was drafted. So I realize I am now in that Mr. category.
Yeah, you're in that. You're in that situation.
Yeah, I'm looking at 2004 birth dates, and I'm just throwing up inside.
And we're also joined now, as we are every year here at the Scouting Combine, by Greg Cosell, the executive producer and analyst of the NFL Matchup. And you've seen him. He does great work on that. And, of course, just fantastic stuff with Greg every year on the draft, on breaking down teams and what's happening in the NFL. And, Greg, we'd love to have you here. This draft.
Well, before we get into that, I just want to say that to me, this is Mr. Max Starks.
Okay, there you go.
Holding on the blind side.
Yeah, that's Mr. Max Starks.
Appreciate it.
So everything that you see in terms of this draft is that it's not top-heavy at all. It's not the blue chippers in this draft aren't necessarily blue chippers in every year, but that there's some depth there beyond that, maybe the first 10 to 12 players. Is that what you're seeing here, Greg?
It's so funny because that's what I read, and I've started, doing my draft work. Obviously, I can't start till kind of mid-January, so, I'm just sort of grinding through, and I'm very random in how I go about it. Like, I can't watch 8 running backs in a row because they all start to look the same, So I'm all over the place. But, I hear that, and I think we have to wait and see on that. And that's easy to say because obviously when we have access to the results, we all sound smarter. But I think there's going to be players that are taken in the top 6 or 7 that are going to end up being really good players. Now, maybe they're not thought of that way right now, but I think they're going to be really good players. Because one thing I've really learned, and it's why at times I've gotten some guys wrong, and we all get guys wrong, and when I do, I admit that I get guys wrong. That happens. Yeah, to me, when I watch a guy, and I know Max would probably really appreciate this, having played in the league, when a guy's 21, sometimes he develops, and at 24, 25, he's a different player.
Yes.
Just because of coaching, development, mature, whatever the reason may be. And no one comes into the NFL as a finished product. And I think we have to be careful about deciding that a 20-year-old or a 21-year-old is exact. Some guys are what they are. Some guys aren't. That's the hard part of scouting.
Right.
No matter what the analytics and sabermetrics and all these metrics say, it's still human beings evaluating human beings. And, boy, is it hard sometimes to decide when you watch a 20 or 21-year-old kid that he's going to be the exact same guy at 25. He may not be,
Well, and I think also – coaching matters. Like
a
where
lot.
They go to develop.
Yes.
Is it a developmental system? Because you look at like Philadelphia, right? You look at Jeff Soutland and what he does as an offensive line coach.
No question.
He takes those guys, and then they become. You're like, holy crap, where did this guy come? Like Jordan Mailata never
played football.
And had he couldn't even find a helmet for the first month.
Cam
that he was
Jurgens was a tight end for 2 years at Nebraska, and then became a center, and he was really, really good this year.
Yeah.
You're right. Yeah.
So coaching does matter. And like you said, the age at which you get those guys, right, that's going to matter. So the development of a guy, I completely agree. I think we argue over the polished nature of a guy at this point.
Yes,
right?
yes, that's a great point.
How polished he is versus how good he can be.
Right.
And that's what some people get enamored with, and that's how you miss in the draft.
Greg, change gears on you. The elephant in the room with the Steelers is the quarterback position. They got right now there's 0 people under contract. If it were to come
that
down,
would be a problem.
That's
a
problem at the moment.
Yeah.
It probably won't stay that way. If you were to make an argument for and against Fields and Wilson, where would you stand on those guys? In an Arthur Smith offense and the state of the team and where the defense is at and running the football.
Look, I'll be the first to admit that I thought in an Arthur Smith offense that Justin Fields could be a productive player.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, they didn't think so, or they wouldn't have made the change. I think Russell Wilson came in and had moments, but I don't think he's the answer. The thing about Wilson to me is he doesn't really give you a consistent pass game. There's not really like an intermediate pass game with Russell Wilson. You know, there's no sense of, oh, he's going to drop back, hit his back foot, and the ball's going to come out. You know, in the sense that there's a rhythmic feel to a pass game. Now, Fields obviously is not that guy either. And, you know, you guys may know more as to why they thought Fields wasn't the answer. Fields, to me, has always been a little bit of an enigma. I know he doesn't see it great, but there are quarterbacks who have been, you know, relatively quality quarterbacks who may not be phenomenal at progression reading and seeing the field great. He's obviously as dynamic a runner as there is in the league at the position. He's a big physical kid. I keep struggling with why Justin Fields can't be. And again, I'm not saying a top 5 quarterback, but why he can't be a starter in this league. I don't know the answer to that. He's one of the, you know, there's a couple of quarterbacks, as much as I study the quarterback position and have been taught by the best guys, there's always a couple of quarterbacks that I just can't get a handle on. He's one, Kyler Murray's one, Trevor Lawrence is one. I just can't get a handle on, as much as I watch those guys, on what they are.
Maybe it all falls into place, or
who
knows, right.
So, I don't know, but I don't think I mean, you guys would know better. I don't think they're going to re-sign Russell Wilson, are they?
I think that's all to be determined at the moment. Yeah.
It's just
look,
they want to have somebody in place before free agency.
Yeah, somebody once told me, and I guess I hope this doesn't come out wrong, because somebody once said this to me, and I realize the world in which we live, you got to be careful. But somebody once said to me, when you don't have a girlfriend, they all look like a 10. You know, and they don't have a quarterback. So, you know, so what starts to happen is they all start to look better than they really are. And you got to be careful about that.
So in that vein, there's going to be 2 quarterbacks, as we know right now, drafted somewhere in the first round. Probably.
Minimum. I would say minimum.
Yeah.
I would say minimum.
Beyond that, though, there's some guys here, I think, that.
Well, I've seen all these guys. These guys I can discuss.
Have some traits.
Tyler Shuck's my
Tyler
guy.
Shuck is the guy that
oh, really?
we have identified as. There's some things
Right.
there that I don't like. He falls off when he throws sometimes, and you know,
Well, I'll give you. I mean,
but the arm talent is there.
I'll give you my thoughts. Okay, I've done these guys in great detail. Okay, Shedeur Sanders. I watched him at Jackson State. I watched him at Colorado for 2 years. I've probably seen 30 games of Shedeur Sanders. Ward, I watched at Washington State last summer, and then I watched 9 or 10 games this year. I'm struggling to understand why Cam Ward isn't thought of more highly. I think Cam Ward is a high-level traits prospect. I don't understand.
They don't seem particularly close to me.
No.
They're not close to me.
Okay.
Yeah, they're not close to me either.
Yeah.
I mean, and again, we don't. The draft is still months away, so maybe it plays out that way, and we all go, okay, that's the way it should play out. But I'm fortunate that I know some people at Washington State who tell me this kid is highly accountable, that he's a dog, he's an alpha mentality, that everything about Cam Ward is exactly what you want. That's what I've heard from people who know him. Obviously, I just sit in my office at NFL Films and watch tape. I don't work for a team, so I'm not doing that kind of due diligence and, you know, talking to the kids and all that.
Yeah.
But I don't understand why he's not thought of higher.
Okay. Where are you on Shuck?
I love Tyler Shuck.
Okay.
I thought his tape, again, this is just tape. I thought his tape was the next best of quarterbacks in this draft.
Okay.
And again, people listening probably think, oh, you hate Shedeur Sanders. You know, that's the world in which we live.
Yeah.
I really like Shuck. And by the way, 6'4" and 7/8", 225, and you know this, Max, that's a trait. I mean, I remember last year, and I'm fortunate enough to get on the field at the Combine, last year introducing myself to Drake May and looking at this kid and going, that's a big dude. That's a trait, don't you agree?
Yeah.
6'5", 225 is a trait.
Well, and
That Roethlisberger guy had that trait.
Yeah.
Well, and that's why we struggle with a Russell Wilson. We struggle with a Kyler Murray. We struggle even with a Baker Mayfield at times.
Right.
Because height plays into your vision.
Yes.
How can I see the defensive secondary if all of my linemen are bigger than me?
Right.
And we talked about this.
And linemen now, people view a lineman at 6'3.5" as short.
Yeah.
I mean, now you got to be 6'5".
Yeah, sure.
Even guards, you know.
Yeah, they want huge. They want huge guys. So your quarterback can't be Minnie Mouse because now you're worried about him. Man, we talked about this even with Drew. As great as Drew was, but Drew had the anticipatory throws.
Right.
Like
he was special in that regard.
He was special in that regard. But you have to look in. We talk about having to look in windows. Not everybody can do the window pane look, right? You know, you see the snapshot in a narrow with blinders on. And so 6'4", 6'5", that means a whole lot because I can see and anticipate a lot more, and that also creates a different trajectory in my arm release, right?
Without question.
So you're right. That is a trait.
So the point is that, Shuck's tape was really good. Again, not to argue, as you said, Dale, it's not that he's a perfect prospect, but I thought his tape was really good. And it's funny. I made these comments on I think on a radio show or so, a week or so ago, and I just got ripped. And then I heard from some GMs in the league who said, you're 100% right. And I've spoken to some GMs. They're not worried about the age. The injury history is the more concerning element, not the age.
The quarterback, he's going to be 26 in September. All right.
26 or 25?
He'll be 26.
Is it 26?
He's 25 now. Yeah.
So let's say he plays 10 years. You're okay with that?
You got 10 years out of it.
Yeah.
You got 2 contracts.
And he's mature.
So let's talk about Shadir. I think he does a lot of things well. Like, I think he throws it well. He doesn't have a power arm, but he throws it well. I think he sees the field well. I think he throws it on the run well. He's not a creator, though. He's at his core, he's a pocket quarterback. I think he needs a lot of work with his sort of pocket awareness and understanding. On Sundays I sit at home and watch games, and I don't take notes or anything, but I hear a lot of announcers. And Tom Brady every week talks about, and he knows a little more about the quarterback position than I do. So Tom Brady every week talks about the fact that sacks are on the quarterback. Yeah. And I think you have to be really careful when you evaluate quarterbacks in assuming if a guy gets sacked a lot that means he has a bad O-line. Now, again, Colorado did not have a good O-line. We can all agree on that.
I will agree with
we
that.
can all agree on that.
Whew.
But,
it's
keep
like
in
Caleb
mind.
Williams last year.
Keep in mind, Caleb Williams was sacked 82 times in his last 2 years at USC, and he led the league in sacks this year. Okay? And Sanders got sacked a ton, and yes, were there some jailbreaks where he had no chance? Yes, there were, without question. I don't want people to come across from this conversation thinking I think he had a great O-line. He did not. But I think that he doesn't manage the pocket really, really well. Plus, another thing, this can be taught, but if a guy's been doing this his whole life, and you know this, sometimes you can teach a guy, but he doesn't do it. He has a bad tendency to hold the ball with one hand.
Yeah.
And
that does drop shoulder, right?
Yeah,
it's that drop shoulder. Yeah, that loaf of bread. Type of feel.
And that does not fly in the league. But I think, to me, what Sanders is, and he can do it really well if you have enough team, is he's a ball distributor and an executor. That's what he is. So you need team. He's the kind of quarterback that needs team.
I compared him to Tua a little bit.
I had someone who I respect greatly. They say that he reminds him of Geno Smith. And Geno Smith has, with a slightly better arm, Geno has a slightly better arm.
I think Geno's a better athlete, too.
Yeah, but I mean, that's that's kind of what he is.
Does Rourke or Dart or Howard or any of those guys excite you?
I haven't done Rourke.
Okay.
And I have not been very much exposed to him. I didn't see a lot of Indiana's games. Dart's intriguing. He grew on me. I think he can be a quality starter in the league. I think his legs are a little better than people might give him credit for. Like a Bo Nix, I think his legs will be a factor. Howard, boy, I've watched a lot of him, and I don't know where I stand. I mean, sometimes I feel like he could be a quality starter, and sometimes I feel like
if you watched him early in Ohio State season, you're like, but he played well during the playoffs.
That was his last month.
Yeah,
last month was his best.
One of my really good friends is a Midwest scout, and he told me, because he stood next to him throwing it, he said it doesn't come out great when you're standing next to him, and I don't think anybody says he has a power arm.
Sure.
But there's something about the kid. I like the way he plays. I think Dart and Howard are in some ways kind of similar. Dart doesn't have a power arm either. But then you get into what are they in the league. I don't think anybody would say they're going to be great NFL quarterbacks, but could they be quality starters depending on your team?
Yeah.
That's what's hard. I mean, it's
very.
How many quarterbacks are transcendent? That's the thing. Everybody wants the quarterback who's transcendent. How many of those guys are there?
Unfortunately for the Steelers, 2 of them are in their division.
I mean,
you got to play against them a whole bunch. Right?
I think you get into the Mahomes, Allen, Jackson, and Burrow. Those guys would be considered, the special of the special. But there's not 25 of those guys.
No, there's not. There's not even 10.
Correct. Right. Yeah. So, I mean, now you get into the team,
Yeah, and I think a lot of those guys do need team, like you said. And I think kind of to go back to Shadur, one of the things, because I was there, I had the Baylor game. And to kind of give us a recap of that game, Shedeur looked terrible in the first half. And like you said, there was jailbreaks. He was also doing things where he was dropping the shoulder on the turn, losing the defense.
Right.
And like you said, that loaf of bread in the hand. But then I watched that fourth quarter and overtime.
Right.
And
I watched that tape.
Yeah, exactly. And the toughness creeps in.
And
right?
and that's another thing. He is a tough kid.
He's a tough kid.
Although I will say this, and he's a tough kid, so don't get me wrong, but just because you get sacked a lot doesn't mean you're tough.
Yes.
Sure.
Yeah. But he is a tough kid. There's no
Yeah.
question about it.
Yeah.
So I mean, I liked his tape. It's not like, again, I almost feel like you have to qualify this stuff because old people think it's, you hate him. No, I think he can be a quality starter. I just don't know if his tape says top 3 draft choice. Which
I don't see a lot of special traits.
I'm with you.
Yeah.
Right.
But I think the other thing comes is desperation of teams that need quarterbacks.
That's
that
the
are at
issue.
the top, right?
Yeah.
Because that's the
a lot
other
of teams
thing.
need quarterbacks this year.
Yeah, a lot of teams need them. So
And they're just starting off.
that's where the value goes up because it's saying, am I willing to deal with the negatives? Do the positives outweigh the negatives? And that's why I'm taking it. Because all of this is a justification, right? When we come out here, it's a justification.
And you know how it works. Scouts and coaches are different, and you know this.
Mm-hmm.
Scouts are looking at attributes, traits, those kinds of things. Coaches, they look at that too, but they think scheme adaptability. Like, when Sean McVay is looking at quarterback, he thinks, can this guy run my scheme? Not does he have, a 10-plus arm, or not does he run the 40 and 4.35. Mm-hmm. He's thinking, can this guy run my scheme?
Yeah, is he smart enough to get what I'm trying to do?
Correct,
Yeah.
right. So, that's where there's a disconnect a lot of times. I think Shedeur Sanders can run a scheme, and depending on the scheme and the people around him can probably run it very efficiently. But I don't think he can run. I don't think he's transcendent in the sense that he lifts everybody up, and he's not going to be Josh Allen.
Well, you mentioned McVay, and you mentioned some transcendent quarterbacks. So just asking for a friend, do you think Matthew Stafford is declining in any way? Any worries about him on the field?
I didn't think so. I think, God, he's such a good thrower of the football, and he's smart. And, I've always, again, this could be a personal thing on my part, I always like aggressive throwing quarterbacks. Mm-hmm. Is he going to make a bad throw once in a while? Sure. But, I think in this league, you've got to turn it loose.
And he sure does.
And he turns it loose.
Yeah.
And there's no change in his throwing ability. Mm-hmm. This guy can throw it. Now, he's still under contract, so we'll see what happens. I don't know what teams will think. He obviously, at this point in his career, he needs a real good O-line. So that's you can't trade for him with a bad O-line because then it's just not going to work out.
Yeah,
it's just not going to work out.
Yeah, he's not going to get the production.
No.
Our guest has been Greg Cosell of NFL Films, and of course you can check out the NFL matchup as well that Greg created.
I created in 1984.
There you go. And it is the standard which all other shows have kind of come off of for that. We appreciate you dropping by, Greg, here at the Combine. I'm Dale Lolley. He is Matt Williamson, and Max Starks here with us. We'll be here until 5 o'clock here at the NFL Scouting Combine, but we'll be back with more on the drive right after this. And we are back. I am Dale Lolley here with Max Starks and Matt Williamson at the NFL Scouting Combine here in Indianapolis. Everything kicking off today. It's all starting.
This
and
is the official.
Bright-eyed and bushy-tailed.
A lot of excitement, yeah.
Today.
Everybody's happy.
Yeah, everybody's happy. Everybody's great. We want to thank Greg Cosell for stopping by there. Always good stuff from him here at the Combine.
Love Greg, man.
You went to his boot camp.
Yeah, so I was in the second ever NFL broadcast boot camp up at Mount Laurel at NFL Film Studios at the HQ where all of our favorite, the Rights of Autumn, right? And all of the dramatics and even all of our the team recaps, right? Are done up there because the NFL Films crews do all of those. And Greg was one of my broadcast coaches.
Very cool.
Early on, and then when I went back for the advanced when I retired, he was one of our 5 moderators that handled our 5-person group as well. So I've gotten to know Greg over the years. I've known him for now 15 years. I love Greg and his matchup show with him and Jaws they're it's just transformational and everybody aspires to like people do in broadcasting where they want to be John Madden. Like Greg Cosell's matchup show, when you're doing studio shows and you're doing game breakdowns, none better.
It's the best.
Yeah.
Still is.
Yeah, still is the best at what he does. So I love Greg, and he gave me some great pointers as a young guy coming into this, media side of things, and I respect him and love him dearly.
So I'm sure that boot camp you learned a ton, huh?
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, essentially, they put you in the fire
Really?
immediately. I mean, you're in there. Because when you go in and like my first broadcast, like mock game broadcast was with Gus Johnson, right? I mean, they put you in there. Howard Dinneroff, who ran Westwood One for 25 years and built the broadcasting arm, he's your producer on radio coverage, right? I mean, you have all of these guys. You pull in I can't think of Nick's last name, but he runs Sunday Night Football. I mean, he was our producer for our pod unit. So you're bringing in the best of the best into this game, and they are working with you, and they are critiquing you just like they would critique their on game day broadcasts. And then for radio, you're dealing with the top executives in there. So it gives you the taste of what this is going to be. Like Nick Pavlatos, who handles NFL programming, Pavlatos is up there, and so you're seeing Cohen and all these guys that run SiriusXM. They're looking for you because they want that talent, and if you can cut it, you can cut it. If you can't, you can't, and they're going to be very open and honest with you. And it's also going to decide if you can do this or not.
Yeah, if it's for you.
Yeah,
or not, right.
if it's for you, because it's a lot of work. I mean, I did both broadcast boot camps, and I did the journalism camp at Bowling Green. So working under guys. Monday morning QB, right? Having to talk to guys from Sports Illustrated, and you're dealing with the top executives that are going to sign you as a writer. Jarrett Bell, who's a good friend to SNR and as well as to the Rooney family. He's one of the top. He's been a top writer for USA Today for how long? I mean, Jarrett Bell's in there grading your column, right?
Wow,
So you're going to experience all that. Peter King, we had a competition. And you had to write an actual article, and it decided if it was going to make it on Monday Morning Quarterback, that like the top guy got that honor. So
it's doctorate level stuff.
But it's immersive. It's just like going to get an executive MBA, right? They're going to put you in the best to see if you can sink or swim.
What the hell did I go to college for?
I mean, Just, hey,
nobody taught me anything. But it's available to
I've had to
active
learn
players.
to be
It's
this
available
bad.
to active and retired players.
Okay.
So
you mentioned you went twice. Right?
Yeah, I went twice. So, I mean, the actual Barcast Boot Camp is for all active players. And then you have, I think, 3 to 4 slots for former players within that one. And then the advanced is only former players, and they only take 5 every year.
Wow, okay.
So I got denied the first year I applied for it, the first year out of retirement, and I made it the second time because I went and I did.
Based off what you did as an active player.
Yeah, well, no, not based off as an active player. It was based off of my work since I'm now retired. What have I done? You have to put a reel together, and you have to submit your works that you've done. So interning. So I remember I went and interned like 120 Sports, and then I worked at Fox 10 out in Phoenix doing Cardinals post game, and then I was an intern for 98.7 FM. And I got a year's worth of real work done, and then I resubmitted, and then I made it
and you got in.
because it showed that because they want to see your desire and want to.
Do you want to do this?
Yeah,
Are you
it's
serious
just,
or not?
I might be able to do this. So no, you have to show you want it.
Exactly, and I mean, because not everybody's going to be, and my comp is Joe Thomas. When he retired, he automatically went to NFL Network, right? I mean, he's a Hall of Fame player. If you don't have a gold jacket in waiting, you're not
Tom Brady guy that
yeah,
Greg
Tom
mentioned,
Brady
right?
got it while he was still an active player. Hey, we'll give you $175 million when you
Right.
retire. It's
The
like
path might be a little easier.
It
Right,
might be a little bit easier. So they want to see the desire to go and grind this out. I mean, I had to go to Chicago and I had to cut film. I'm cutting like 2-minute clips because 120. Their thing was, how can I give you 120-second increments? So I was in the editing. I wasn't even in front of a camera. Like when I interned, I did everything in the background. I did what Tyler's doing over here, running the boards and doing all of that stuff. And then somebody got sick, and they said, "Hey, can you do the PFF, our top 5 linemen?" That's the only reason I got in front of a camera during my internship.
Wow.
And I was fully prepared to just be a behind-the-scenes type of guy, mentally. And so eventually I got the opportunity to be in this position.
So Greg mentioned this. This is something we've talked about on the drive for years now. As an offensive lineman, I have a feeling you're not going to fight me on this, that quarterback sacks are as much a quarterback stat, if not more so, than an O-line stat.
Yes, I agree with that. And one of the biggest things is, there are those jailbreak moments, right?
No question.
Listen,
right.
I have one every single year. God bless Ben for dealing with me on this. But corner fire the first time we get it with a slot rotation. Nobody probably understands what that is. Oh, Ben understands that. And I always got caught once a year, every year, on the same freaking style of play to the same side. Wasn't the same team. Obviously, I knew I learned that lesson. But somebody else would see that and say, okay, he hasn't gotten it this year, and they would send it, and then we would get to Monday meetings and be able to say, is that the one, Max? Yep, that's it.
Got it out of your system, huh?
Got it out of my system. So, but
there are quarterbacks that take sacks.
But
thanks,
quarterbacks
Max.
that do. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Ben's like sitting there with an ice pack on his low back. It's like, yeah, thanks for that, especially to the blind side.
But I actually think that's been a Steeler problem. I think the line gets more heat than it deserves this past year.
Yes.
And I know you guys don't hear my broadcast, but when they come down to me, I am screaming usually at the top of my lungs. I'm like, that is not on Dan Moore. That is not on Broderick. That is not on Isaac. Now, there are moments when they are, and I can tell you schematically, you guys mis-ID'd the mic, and then problems ensued, or this guy got beat off the ball because he stepped inside worrying about taking away Zach Frazier's snap hand to protect him, and you exposed yourself. There's plenty of those. But when you're talking about after the 2.5 second mark, that's when it's on the QB. And what was one of Russ's big issues?
And has
holding
been
on to
most
that
of his
ball.
career.
And the other thing, we talked about this kind of sparingly, but Russ has a tendency to drop to the back shoulder and spin out of things. Most quarterbacks, like when you watch Pat Mahomes, Pat doesn't spin out of pressure. He moves through it. Mm-hmm. And he'll step up and in, he'll step out and around while keeping his vision downfield. Russ, once you turn over that shoulder and you spin move out of it,
taking your eyes
off, and now that's on you. Yeah. Now whatever happens, because now you've lost, and Russ has to read and react.
And then his height becomes even more of a problem.
And his height's an issue because now he's switched his position physically, right? And now he has to reorient himself. That's about a second, and that's a second you can't have because this guy already had 2.5 seconds to work on this offensive tackle. Mm-hmm. So now you're talking at 3.5 seconds. That's on you, and that's one of the things that our O-line got a lot of flack for. And, yes, listen, off the edge, that Buffalo game in the preseason, Troy, yes, that was on the line.
Yeah.
Broderick, yes, that was on you. Off the edge immediately and not getting a hand on him, bucketing your step. But for all intents and purposes, anytime you get over the 2.5 second mark, that now becomes a quarterback's issue.
So Next Gen Stats tracks this stuff, and it probably will blow listeners away, but exactly what you're saying – the average time to pressure, and I know that's not exact. Whenever they say, boom, that's a pressure. Only the Chiefs and the Ravens had a higher average time to pressure.
Yeah.
So they're holding up.
Yes.
They're doing their job. You know?
Yeah,
I think that's really encouraging going forward, and people don't look in this line in that way enough.
Yeah, no, they don't. And now we also have to remember this line's now going to change. So last year's squad – so as you say, yesterday's price ain't today's price. Last year's line is not going to be this year's line. And like we said, we had that conversation with Ramon earlier, like where do these pieces fit? I mean, we feel good about Zach and Mason, where they stand. So, James Daniels. But you have Isaac. Now you have Broderick potentially moving to left, as Omar stated.
Yeah,
right?
he was with us to mention it.
He stated and said that he's going to go to left. So now Fautanu has to either be that tackle or, however you're going to, move it around, or you bringing somebody else in, however you're going to work it, now that line has to now gel. And they need time now to get used to each other, because especially if Broderick's moving to a brand-new side. I mean, he's got flashes at it. It's going to take some time for him and Isaac to kind of get together. But Mason and Zach should pick up where they left off. Mm-hmm. And then Fautanu should then have to work with him and Mason, which I don't think is going to be a huge issue if he's going to be at that right tackle position. But like you said, last year's line, just taking the snapshot from last year, it was a good line. Now,
better than given credit for, especially
protections. Now, run game, a lot left to be desired. There was a lot of miscommunication, a lot of the scheme stuff they didn't fit up properly, so they're going to have to build on that. That's one of the things I will say. Their run blocking was the only thing that took them away from it and put them into more passing situations. If they had ran more effective, even less exposure, I think they probably would have been a higher echelon team because we weren't forced to throw. That was the problem that it was. So the run game is going to have to come along this year.
How much of that was having so many young guys in the lineup? Your whole right side of your line was
there's not a lot of starts
24 or younger.
Yeah, right. Yes.
And it just just not a lot of experience.
But you can make up for it if it's a simplified scheme. The problem was it wasn't a simplified scheme. Like, there was a lot more counter action, you know, and with the young line, you want to start out with a lot of easy zone, a lot of easy man, right? When you start pulling pieces, you start Z-mowing guys and exfil. You're bringing guys into the picture. For young guys, they're not used to seeing that, right? Normally in college, it's either stationary, short movement on that side and back to see if it's man or zone. The cross formation stuff killed the young guys and their learning curve. Yeah. And that's what
too much on their plate.
Yeah, it's too much on their plate. And because defenses knew they were young, they would also disguise and hold to the last second. You know, especially if they're in zone. You're trying to figure out they're in zone or man, but the guy runs halfway and then stops.
And then goes,
but he's in the box
right
by the time the ball is snapped. So now you've really screwed that guy in those moments, especially when we had eighth man in the box. You're trying to bring that slot in to come dig out the backside free safety, right? Those are the issues that I think really hampered them. It should have been simple. It should have been we should line up and run it.
Was that an Arthur Smith issue or is that a Pat Meyer issue?
C, all of the above.
Okay.
Sure.
Both
and a youth issue.
Yeah,
and,
Pat should have advocated for what he knew was in his room. And that's the one thing that I benefited from. I had Russ Grimm my first 3 years. And Russ, the one thing that I will say that I loved and I think that really allowed for me to be in this league a long time was Russ taught us to understand defensive schematics. He hammered it home, and he hammered home your assignment. He didn't teach any technique. Technique was out the window. If you go and look at our footwork, it was crap, you know. But we knew who to block, and we knew how to block.
Think as the defense thinks.
Yes, think as them, and that was the greatest benefit. So then when I get a Larry Zerline in my career who's all about technique and doesn't teach you anything about defensive schematics, right? You know, now I'm become more efficient. I can marry that. And then you get Sean Kugler, and Kugler's a mix of both. So it's like I got the great cross-section in 3-year increments at each level to where I did finish off my career being highly efficient, being highly effective. And then, like you said, then you get a Mike Munchak. That's a tough label for anybody to follow because Mike is the ultimate. You're talking about a Hall of Fame guy that played all 5 positions, played 20 years in this league.
There's not many like him. Yeah, right.
He is an absolute, like, I would say him and Ray Brown are probably the two that if you were going to get a coach, like that's along with Russ Grimm, like those are transcendent level offense line coaches. And I think Jeff Stoutland.
I would say, like, what's going on in Philly right now? Right?
That's another guy that's in that. But there's not a lot of those coaches out there that can do it and do it to that level. So Pat should
Munch could be a Hall of Famer in 2 regards.
Oh, yeah. He should be a Hall of Fame position coach, but they don't take the positions. It's only the head coaches, right? But I think Pat should have advocated for those guys. You know, say, hey, Art, listen, I know we're trying to get let's get the bare bones the first 4 or 5 games of the season, and then let's start to work that in slowly because we were still mixing and matching, right? You know, you still had James Daniels, then James gets out, and then you throw Mason in there.
They had 4 guys make their first career start in the first 6 games.
Yes. Yeah. That's tough, right? And so I think that's where we kind of lose it because we're so worried about philosophy and so worried about schematics. We forget about the age and the absorption of the offense. Especially for when you're talking about 2 rookie guys and a second-year guy that only had half the games the previous year, but only had less than 20 starts in college, he's still a rookie. Like you said, that whole right side, center to right guard or to right tackle, that was brand new. I consider that brand new. Until you have 17 to 20 games under your belt, you're brand new at the offensive line position. And you also had your second coordinator for Roderick Jones, right? So that third coordinator, I should actually say.
Right, yeah.
Third coordinator.
Right, good point.
So
and he didn't play a lot of Georgia.
No, he didn't play. He didn't have to finish games. So now taking a kid into the 4th quarter, he didn't know about tired until he got to the league because they were blowing everybody out at Georgia by 20 points.
And back to like the sack conversation, Najee Harris has done some good things here.
Yes,
but I also don't think vision is his strongest strength, is his best strength, or
without a fullback.
Without a fullback.
He came from Alabama with a fullback.
He's not a straight zone runner. You know, like he wasn't built for this system.
He's built for man. He's built for man counter, and he needs a lead blocker.
A different back might make a difference.
Yeah, a different style. Yeah, a different style of back makes a difference. Because we all saw it, and we all talked about it. Night and day when Jalen was in versus when Najee was in, right? Now, granted, I wish Jalen had Najee's body or Najee had Jalen's vision, right? You can play you can play Frankenstein's monster all you want, but it's like you need the marrying of both of those things to run in this system because Derrick Henry had great vision, but also Derrick Henry had a sixth gear that we didn't know about, right?
And, by the way, the body.
Yeah.
The body was
not
there,
too
right?
shabby.
So I think that's where, Najee was a square peg in a round hole. He just made it work. But it was a lot of tough, like slogging it out and a lot of physicality to get there when it didn't
You got to
need
fight
to be.
every yard.
Yeah.
He's always hand fighting and upper body, and it's like a boxing match. Yeah.
Well, and at the handoff point, he's not the yard and a half closer to the line of scrimmage to make the cut that he should have been. That's the other thing.
That's free yardage there, yeah.
He was very slow off, so that's why we're like, man, he's getting hit in the backfield every time, because he should have been a yard and a half up by the time the handoff came, right? You know what I'm saying? So those are like the little things a lot of people don't say.
Junk, yeah,
the offensive line, just let that guy run scot-free. It's like, no, we're into the double team. We're waiting for that guy to fire, but if you're a yard and a half further back, now I get on it, that guy's going to hit the gear because he sees I got a little bit of extra yardage there, and so now I can cross off of that. Or because he's so far back, I can now hide on the backside and come off of the other double team. So now you have a guard and a tackle blocking to nobody because that guy free-fired in the backside hole. Like there's all these little things that, just made for an inefficient line group. And everybody shares the blame pie, right? You cut it into equal pieces and spread it around. But I thought that was one of the things I wish Pat would have advocated more for, and Art would have understood that a little bit better. But that communication just wasn't there because the previous guy didn't communicate with anybody. So, your coaching staff has one adjustment versus four. It's not like Art brought his whole staff with him and everybody understood and they could talk equally.
Doesn't happen overnight.
Doesn't happen overnight. Matt Canada didn't talk to anybody. So, therefore, how do I know to advocate? Because I wasn't allowed to advocate because I had nobody to advocate to. So it's a growth by the coaching staff as well as the players.
Let's get to a break. That is Max Starks with, breaking it all down for us. Good stuff.
Hey, it's off season. I'm allowed to go a little bit off hinge.
Absolutely. He's Matt Williamson. I am Dale Lolley. We are live at the NFL Scouting Combine here in Indianapolis. Everything will kick off tomorrow. We'll start to see some players rolling through here for interviews.
That'll be nice.
Thursday.
Place kickers.
Place kickers.
Yay.
Oh, is that what they're leading off?
Yeah, place kickers are first and then D-line.
Yeah, D-lineman. D-lineman. Let's talk about that when we come back.
Oh, yeah.
Right after this on The Drive, you're listening to Fox Sports Pittsburgh and Steelers Nation Radio. And we are back. I'm Dale Lolley here with Max Starks and Matt Williamson at the NFL Scouting Combine. And we talked some offensive line play there in the last segment. Defensive line play for the Steelers. We know Cam Hayward is much closer to the end than he is the beginning of his career.
Yes.
When we had Greg Cosell on, he mentioned that he loves Keanu Benton.
He said that off the air, but
he said it off the air.
Our people listening would have liked to have heard it, I'm sure.
I've gotten a lot of people who've said Keanu Benton was a disappointment this past season. And I get it. You want more. You want to see 5 or 6 sacks. And I keep saying, I can remember when I used to do the Stephon Tuitt show, and talking with Tuitt about it. He says, I was this close to getting more sacks, and I was watching tape, and I would come free, and all of a sudden I'd start chopping my feet instead of just running through the quarterback. So I think the fact that Keanu is getting the pressures is going to lead to the sacks.
There's an art to finishing.
There's an art to finishing.
Yeah, we call it the get near guy and the get there guys.
Yeah.
That's what Wolf and I always talk about when we're doing our analysis during training camp. And Keanu's consistently been a get near guy. But the get nears will translate to get theirs over time, right? You have to develop confidence.
And get near is not terrible.
No, get near is not terrible because get near pushes you to the get there guy.
Yeah.
Right, you know what I'm saying?
TJ gets another one.
Like I said, TJ, especially when it's TJ, Cam, and Keanu. If Keanu or Alex blows off the edge, TJ, Cam are getting the benefit of that.
They're get their guy.
Yeah, they're both get their guys. And now Alex has become that get their guy as well because of the two get theirs. Do get near activities, right? So I know I'm using a lot of those.
He can get to be that guy.
He can get to that guy, but I think schematic fit, right?
I don't think he's a nose.
No, he's a 3 technique.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's where he's going to be the get there guy, is moving a position wider in his, not a 1 or a 0, playing off of the center and the guard, because guess what? Those are the phone booth guys.
Yeah.
And
they're also easier to find.
Yeah, exactly.
I'd rather have the guy that has his skill set than the pure nose and looking for the 3 technique.
Yeah.
Right.
And so, don't waste his availability or blame him on that because he's lined up in the wrong spot schematically. Because if he moves between what we call the telephone booth is the interior three, the islands are the tackles, right? You put a guy in the phone booth / island zip code, that's where you get there. That's why Cam has been so good, right? You know, especially in this 4-down nickel front, because he's getting that. Because the attention is going to your outside guys. The island guys have to get out there quickly, so there's a void in the B gap. But the A gaps are like steel shut doors, right? You're not going to get there. Warren Sapp, if he move, and I make this type of comparison, you move Warren Sapp to nose, he's not as effective. He's not a Hall of Famer.
Right. He couldn't do what Booger did
Yeah, exactly. He's not going to do what Booger did, and Booger can't do what Sapp did.
Sure.
Right, but they were in the right spot, and then you had Simeon Rice, right? So the same thing can be said, and why Casey Hampton will never make the Hall of Fame is because the stats aren't there for what he did. But if you ask any of us that played with him, guy's a Hall of Fame talent.
Yeah.
Because of what he was asked to do.
Any of those
Vince
guys.
Wilfork, another one in that same vein, you know. But without Vince Wilfork, does Richard Seymour make it into the Hall of Fame? Right. So there's those type of things. But I think you have to go find a true nose that can penetrate, get skinny, and create pressure up the middle to allow Keanu Benton to be free release.
Let me ask you this. Would you take 2 defensive linemen in this draft?
Yes.
It's that loaded too, by the way.
It's that loaded. I'm not saying it's like facetious, like, oh, we just need bodies in there. No, the quality of talent
that
we have up and down this, I mean, you can argue there are a lot of talent, especially in day 2. Like there's a lot of value in day 2, and the guys that slip out
round 4. Maybe.
I was about to say day 3, the top that first fourth round pick area. There's guys that are going to slide that should have been in day 2 that are going to be available in day 3.
Last year, or maybe second-round picks.
Yeah.
Because this one's so deep.
Yeah.
It's much like the offensive tackles last year in the draft. It was so deep that you could get one.
You weren't worried.
You could get Roger Rosengarten in the 4th round.
Yeah,
like, oh, okay.
Yeah, this guy can plug and play, and he'll be all right, right? You know, you can go find the Tyler Lindenbaum. Yeah. You know, you can find those guys that are going to be, okay, he's a tackle as well, but also have guard capability in day 2. This year, like nose and 3 techniques, galore.
So go fishing in those waters, man. Go
fish in those waters, and don't be afraid to drop bait in there multiple times. I think because you're going to get
2 different styles. I mean, you could get the 3-4 end and the nose, you know, or
and
technique.
At the end of the day, as long as you hammer down the nose with one of those 2 picks, and I prefer the nose.
Benton can bump.
And Bennett now can bump or play behind Cam. And I think even
now you've
better.
created all kinds of depth.
Now you've created depth. And I think that's the biggest thing. And then whatever you want to do with DeMarvin Leal, you do it DeMarvin Leal, right?
Yeah. Because he's his own. He's a different beast of all of them.
He's one that I feel like if I'm projecting what I would want to see DeMarvin to be is a 4-2 nickel defensive end. That's where I think he's going to be his best. And I think in regular formation, those spots are taken. And that's why I think you have to slide him in. To get to base personnel, he's a 3-4 DN.
Right.
Essentially, that's what he is.
Yeah.
He's a 3-4 defensive end that happens to be playing in a 4-down system, so he has no home.
But he's not really a LeBeau, Aaron Smith, Kiesel guy either.
He's not. But
they had
this
that
league
guy,
doesn't have that.
They had that guy with Mike Vrabel back in the 90s.
Yes.
They didn't know what to do with Mike Vrabel. They'd have him gain 20 pounds one year, then they'd have him lose 20 pounds the next year.
Trying to fit a square peg in a round hole, right?
And he's obviously was a good football player, but he just didn't fit this particular scheme.
Yeah, he wasn't Levon Kirkland.
No. And like Leal on a 2-point stance outside the tackle isn't going to be Herbig.
No,
you know,
it's not.
I mean, he brings a different element. I'm not saying he's a bad football player, but he is hard to get on the field.
Yeah, he's a hard edge. He's a 3-point defensive end. 3-point. He has to have his hand in the dirt. That's when he's most effective. But he can't have sideboards. He can't be at the 3 technique and do what he does. He has to be at the 5. And there's no 5 in this system, right? Because we don't dictate that, and teams don't give us the luxury of being able to dictate that as well. So that's where it's like, but if you get Keanu in a position where he can be behind and play the 3 technique, that's where we're at our best. Or we run 4-2 wide nickel defense, right? And you just let your 2 middle backers be the pseudo nose in subsets. Like that's the only way. But the problem is you give up run capability when you do that. It's only in passing situations that you can really exploit that. So it's got to be the right fit. But getting a nose here, a true nose that can create, that's why a Nolan is so attractive. That's why Grant, all those guys are attractive because they can create from the nose position, because that's special to be able to create from that. Like Aaron Donalds aren't coming around, right? Those guys are not a dime a dozen. They're generational talent to be able to take contact and avoid contact at the same time and split offensive linemen in the A gap.
But there's a catch-22 with the nose too. Like Hampton was a perfect example. Wilfork was a perfect example.
Yeah.
Like if you don't have that guy, they're going to keep you in base and run up the A gaps.
Yes.
If you do have that guy, they're going to keep you a nickel, and he's going to stand on the sidelines.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Go 11, and we're like, hey, as long as he's out there, we can run the ball. 7-man box, that's all we care about.
Mm-hmm.
But the second and eighth drops in, okay, we got a little bit of worries. But I'll take my chances with the eighth guy being a smaller, lighter guy that's coming down to fill, and them going into man on the secondary, if I have the quarterback that can throw them out of that.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So that's where you need the mobile guy, and that's where I think Nolan presents that great one. And I even had, Farmer has the
Farmer's
capability.
interesting, yeah.
He's another one that's very intriguing because I feel like he has it. It's just FSU was so terrible last year.
Yeah.
Like they were so bad, and I think he mailed it in a little bit.
Broke your heart.
Yeah. Listen,
But he's got pretty long arms.
My Seminole heart was so very. I feel like the Grinch when it comes to talking about the Seminoles, right? I have zero heart there. but he has the long arms. He can create extension, and that's what you want, right? You want a guy who can lock out and also take on two guys in the run game, but also it's like, okay, do I let this guy get in? Because if he is over the nose and you do get to the center snap hand side, right, shoulders a little bit more exposed. If I got long arms, I can now take that, so that arm can't trigger back as easy, and now I can flow through the hole, like with the rip move underneath.
And you think Farmer's capable of that?
Yeah, I think he's capable of that capability. So there are those guys, but I think we have to address it specifically. Like it has to be addressed specifically in the top two picks, if you're asking me.
Absolutely. Let's get to a break. We're up against the hour break here. So he is Max Starks. I'm Dale Lolley. That's Matt Williamson. You're listening to The Drive here on the Steelers Audio Network and Fox Sports Pittsburgh. We will be back with hour number 2 of our ongoing coverage here. We're here until 5 today at I should say hour number whatever we're in now.
Yeah.
Hour number 2 of our particular group.
Of our set.
Yes.
But
we'll be back with more right after this from the live from the Scouting Combine here in Indianapolis. I'm Dale Lolley. He is the Matt Williamson. And, of course, Max Starks also here with us. He is off doing a little something here right now.
He's always got a side project going.
Yeah. Matt, we were talking earlier when Jerry was on, and we were talking about that top part of the draft. Ideally for the Steelers, and we started to see some of this creep into this. We started to see Omarion Hampton's name creep up into the first-round consideration and start to see him maybe even being a top 20 guy. We started to see that with Travion Henderson.
More and more, right.
See more of these guys, getting into, we know Ashton Genty is going to be
he's a good
somewhere in that top 20. I don't think he gets past 21 if that's the case.
If that's the case, listen, whatever I just said, throw it out. Take Ashton Genty.
Right. Don't let him get past 21.
Do not let him get past 21 because, and I had that Penn State game, with Ashton Genty, and that was a tough sledding for him.
He was a one-man gang.
But he was the only guy. They said, we are going to get rid of this guy, and that's all we care about.
And you never see that.
No.
I mean,
not in today's game. You don't see such attention paid to a running back in that type of vein, but he denoted it. I mean, he was the Saquon Barkley of NCAA last year, right? You know what I'm saying?
His yards after first contact are like off the charts.
And his yards before first contact was great too.
Pretty good too, right?
Yeah, he was around 4.5 yards before first contact, and then the yards after that contact, because that's a smaller body type, was just phenomenal.
Yeah.
I mean, it was crazy to watch it, even for as tough as it was for Penn State, like hitting him, you still were holding your breath. Yeah. Every single second.
If you missed him.
If you missed,
it was off him, right?
It was going to be a long day for you. And I mean, and watching his film, the Mountain West Championship game. I mean, he absolutely decimated the squad. I mean, it was honestly, it was like playing a video game with him this year. And I think whoever he goes to, he is going to be that guy. I don't think he gets past Dallas personally. But
there's a couple spots.
There's a couple spots. No way he gets it. Yeah, Denver definitely is
There's
not
a lot of teams that could use it. And I've been asked 100 times already, well, if he's available at 21, do you take him? Yes, I do.
Yes,
He
absolutely.
might be the best player in the draft.
Forget the last 7 hours of coverage here, guys.
Right.
If Ashton Genty is at 21, you can just mail it home. Sorry, we're done. Let's talk about this. Just like I feel like if Ted McMillan is there, because there's no way I don't care what anybody says, Ted McMillan's not making it out of the top 15. I'm sorry. Like, I've watched this kid grow. I've saw him at U of A. I live in Arizona. I covered him in the Alamo Bowl.
You've been watching him
last
every
year.
step of the way?
I've watched him, and listen, and I love his little quarterback, Noah Fertitta, right? Like, those two have been together since 8th grade. He's caught a touchdown from this dude every year since 8th grade.
That's crazy.
You know what I'm saying? So, and it's not clean.
That streak's going to get broken next year.
It's going to get broken, sadly, because Noah's
Still a
not an
pretty good
NFL
streak.
quarterback. That's a streak to break, but he's going to be a problem for anybody because his yards after the catch is stupid. Like, I say stupid in a very good sense.
Yeah, rare.
I mean, Oklahoma had all of their starting corners, and it did not matter. You could have put all 4 of them on him for one play. Noah was still going to throw to him, and he was still going to have 200 yards receiving. Like, that's just he has a sense, like the body feel. We talk about George Pickens and his extreme catch radius. Like, just imagine George Pickens a little bit taller, right? And a little bit more wiggle at the top end speed. That's what you got with Ted.
Where do you think he runs when he's here?
I mean, I don't think he's
as long as he doesn't run a 4.6, he's fine. But
yeah, exactly. He's going to be a 4.48 to 4.5, I believe, right in that range.
Okay.
But
which is great.
And his game speed is way faster than what he's going to run at this.
You just keep hearing maybe Indianapolis won't be his best place to show his.
No, it won't be.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure. I don't know if he will run. I think he might decline to run just to wait for his pro day, because then he'll be back in his friendly confines, a field that he's run all over everybody in, and also the weather
the 40
conditions
can only hurt him.
Yeah, the 40 can only hurt him. Everything else, like 5.10.5, L drill, vertical height, he's going to kill it. You know what I'm saying? And then his tape backs up all of those stats. The 40 is the one that's not going to help him because, when is a wide receiver ever going to be in a three-point stance and have to be at a certain, I used to watch Gorsak, right? Like, hey, back that hand up. hey, move this front foot up. It's an unnatural position for a lot of football players that it's just strictly a track metric to just give us a number.
It's a different sport.
Yeah, it's a completely different sport, but his tape outshines anything that you've seen. Just turn on any game, and you'll say, yeah, I want him. Like, there's 6'5", you like Greg talked about. That's a metric in and of itself. The height, his catch radius, and his ability to get away from you after the catch.
I watched him against Arizona State last year, and I was like, he's good. I don't know if he's great. Now, the quarterback play obviously played into that, and Arizona State killed them.
Yeah, exactly. Because you have a 5'8" quarterback.
Okay.
Yeah.
So back to Arizona State, I know you're a Skattebo fan.
Yes.
Through the Steeler Network, people said, talk to Max about Skattebo. What do you think of some of these other backs not named Genty? Because he's not going to be there 21.
Cam Skattebo I love in day 2. I think he did a lot to help himself this year. A guy from Sacramento State, right? And, he was good a year ago. He played himself into a different stratosphere this year.
Skattebo we're talking about.
Skattebo, yeah. I mean, and I went out to practice because obviously Hines is out there, as wide receivers coach, and it's only 20 minutes from my house. So, and I had the Cincinnati game that was in Cincinnati, ASU, and then I also had the Big 12 championship game. And watching Cam Skattebo, he is deceptively fast.
Yeah.
He's not a 100-yard sprinter, but if you give him a 70-yard short track, indoor track, that dude's going to surprise you, and he's going to finish up near the tape.
Heck of a receiver, too. I don't think he gets enough credit for
I was about to say, underrated. Both him and Genty, I feel like, are both highly underrated in the hands game. Like, their receiving skill, because they're not asked to do it because, for ASU, Jordan Tyson was your guy. You know what I'm saying? Xavier Guillory were your guys to go catch the ball. And then they had
pure receiving backs? I don't know who those two are.
Yeah, no, those are two of their wide receivers.
Oh, okay. They're the ones
catching the ball. And they both had 1,000 yards. So, like, there was no need for Cam Skattebo to run that. Like, he'll run an occasional screen, but because they were so worried about Tyson and them, that's what freed up their run game.
Gotcha.
Because they could never play inside-out coverage, and the safeties had to stay deep because they were going to get burned. So you always had 7-man boxes. So, For Cam, I think he's going to be really well suited with a second back. I think him and Jalen Warren would pair really well together in the backfield.
Be a good match, yeah.
He gives me Peyton Hillis vibes.
Okay. He
gives me a strong Peyton Hillis vibes. He's not quite Mike Allstott, but nobody really is. So, I put him in that category, and I think he is a day 2 guy, and I would love, hey, if he's sitting there in the 3rd round, still, if he slides that far, I'd take him.
Yeah,
I'd take him.
I'm not sure second is a little rich
no,
for me.
Second's a little
Third,
bit rich.
I'd consider.
Now, unless we trade it back and there's an additional second,
if you get extra picks,
you get an additional second, I would take him, no questions asked, at the back of the 2nd round. But he's 3rd round. He was probably 6th, 7th undrafted free agent before last season. He's bumped himself up at least 2 to 3 rounds.
He's not going to run real well here.
No, he's not. He's going to be a 4.58 guy speed-wise, but the problem is he has breakaway after contact speed.
Here's what I think people get too caught up in the speed aspect of running backs and not enough in the vision aspect of it.
Yeah.
Like, you could be as fast as you want. You could have Carl Lewis out there. You could have,
But
whoever. But if he
whoever
can't see the holes, it doesn't matter.
It don't matter. It don't matter. And your lateral agility matters. How you do off balance, spin, a hit to the side. You got to. His contact balance is excellent, like Ashton Genty.
Kyron Williams isn't beating anybody in a race.
No. I might beat Kyron Williams in a race, but guess what? He's still going to weave, and he's going to get you 7-8 yards, right? I mean, and that's. And what are we talking about? I need a guy I can depend on to get 4 yards a carry every time. That's what you get with Cam Skattebo. You get 4+.
Yeah.
Because also his offensive line, he had a really good offensive line. Leif Faetano is another guy, not related to Troy, but their center did a really good job of IDing and making sure that they had the blocks. Cam understood that. So him and his
those
center,
guys are future pros.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, yeah.
They had an elite level of knowledge with each other, and Cam played excellent off of that. Like Utah, if you go back and watch the Utah tape, it was a thing of beauty to watch. And I remember sitting there. I didn't have that game. I was doing my studying, for another Big 12 opponent. And I'm sitting there watching it, and I'm like, who the hell? And that's when he first stood out to me, because he hit 4 guys and then went 40 more yards. Like that. And then you watch.
You see a lot of that with him.
Yeah. How many guys, let's think about this, in history have lost a bowl game and they went into the locker room to deliver the offensive MVP to that guy on the losing team?
Yeah.
Think about that. In the college football
You're the best player
playoff,
on the field. Right.
You were undeniably the best player on the field. And we don't care what the score was, but he single-handedly brought ASU back in that game to take it into overtime. Mm-hmm. And he was phenomenal. There's something to be said about that type of personality. And he does not have an ego. That's the other thing. Like, all these things. Big 12 championship game, MVP as well. Got the WWE belt and all that stuff, and he handed it off to his offensive line.
Do you worry about the wear and tear on him?
I know people in the league do.
Well, you're going to, and that's why I think he's not a lead number 1 back, and that's why I think we're talking about the end of day 2, early day 3.
But you don't draft running backs thinking they're going to be there 8 years from now either.
No, you don't draft them for second contracts.
Right,
It's a rental car program, right? It's like I'm leasing this guy, and also I'm pairing. If I'm getting Cam Skattebo,
kids throw up in the back seat.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying. Hey, that crayon melted in the back, the back corner in the window.
It's a little pink back there.
Yeah, it's all good. That yellow one, it'll come out eventually.
In a couple years, it doesn't look quite as good.
Exactly. Hey, I kept it under
my daughter learned to drive on it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and I think you're drafting him to pair him with another running back, right? Mm-hmm. You're going the Detroit type of system. David Montgomery, Jahmyr Gibbs, right? He's going to be a great number 2 off of that.
Yeah,
and I think that's where, if you have Jalen Warren, that's why you get a Cam Skattebo. You don't get a Cam Skattebo if you don't have anybody in your backfield. Mm-hmm. You're trying to build it from scratch, and that's where he kind of falls behind Ashton Genty, because Ashton Genty is your starter. You build around him.
Yeah.
Cam Skattebo is coming in, and he's going to be a really strong exclamation point and highlighter for you to come in and be your number 2. And he's a change-up because he's the one that's going to take the physicality. Jalen Warren's going to escape and nimble his way through. This guy's a sledgehammer with vision. So he's essentially gives you some Najee capabilities with the vision aspect. When we're talking about how we wanted to meld these two, you get a Cam Skattebo, and December football is where he's going to thrive. He's not going to do great in September and October. I don't need him to be great in September and October.
Get the job done. And,
December, January, when I can depend on you and you can play in cold weather, I think that's what he brings to this. And he brings a physicality with it, along with some breakaway speed if you catch him off guard.
I don't know that this front office will be big on taking running backs in the first round. And
Yeah.
Genty's different. I mean, he's not going to be there. But, I mean, I don't think that's going to be a trend with this front office.
Yeah.
But if you take a third-round Skattebo, or there's a lot of names that would fit the bill,
trade down Henderson, I think,
and then 2 years from now, Skattebo becomes Warren in the age thing, and you take another one every 2 years, and you just keep that going. That's winning football. That works. Right? In this league.
because once again, if you're banking on finding like our three guys this offseason, right? You're going to take Josh Jacobs, Derrick Henry, and Saquon Barkley. That trio's not coming around, right?
Right.
You know what I'm
and
saying?
they went to great teams.
And they went to the teams that just needed that as their difference.
That was the missing ingredient.
Right, that was the missing ingredient.
The Giants wouldn't have been in the Super Bowl with Barkley.
No. They were not, as we saw.
Right.
And also, for Saquon, he didn't fit their system.
Right.
And that's the other thing. Picking a guy that fits your system of what you want to run matters.
I think
not
that's going to be key. And I know this. I almost know the Steelers are going to draft a back.
Yeah.
But I think the one they take, system fit wise, is going to be very important.
Take Tracy for the Giants. Tyrone Tracy. He fits their system. That's why he looks so good, and that's why you're like, hey, well, we'll
you can get one of these guys anywhere. You can get him in the sixth round.
He fit their system. That's why he was so good for them, and that's why the Giants are like, okay, well, now we just worry about every other position that we don't have an issue with, and that's not a wide receiver or defensive tackle.
Looking for a certain type of back. They want Clinton Portis.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah, they want specific guys. So if you find the guy that specifically fits your system, you're going to be in a good place. And that guy is here, especially later in the draft, for the Steelers. So that's the thing where you don't have to say, oh, my God, if we don't get Ashton Genty or we don't get this guy, it's all over with. No.
You'll be fine. Yeah.
There's plenty of them here.
Yeah. And then I might take another in the 7th round or an undrafted free agent. There's enough
guys.
I
think there'll still be some good ones in undrafted free agency.
They can be your kick returner. They can be your, do whatever you need to do. One of the things that is kind of 4 years ago, all we heard was, well, Mike Tomlin just takes these running backs and runs them into the ground because he only uses one back. I said, yeah, he did that when he had Le'Veon.
Yeah, exactly.
Because Le'Veon he was your short yardage back. He was your third down back.
He was your third receiver,
for
God's sakes.
Right.
Yeah, he was your slot receiver.
You're not taking that guy off the field. Like, who are you taking off the field for that guy?
Yeah, exactly. Nobody's going to come and say, hey, he's better than him at this. Nobody.
At anything. Yeah. Protection, receiving, anything.
Exactly.
Right.
The last 2 years, we've seen that. The last 2 years with Jalen and Najee, okay.
Yeah.
Najee's rookie year, they ran him like crazy because they didn't have that other back. Well, now they have two, they have the two backs. Well, now you got to find something to replace that.
Yeah, you got to replace that. And also, let's face it, not all yards look the same.
Sure.
Why bang your head up against this wall? Why me try and run through this wall every time when I have a guy that can run around that wall? Or if there's somebody there, I know that I'm good to take another route to get there. And that's what it is. It's like you want the vision. We talked about that. The vision matters in this system especially because we don't use a fullback, right? Even for some of the greatest teams, we could argue for Derrick Henry, he had Patrick Ricard. You know what I'm saying? The
that's
Charger.
Helpful.
Yeah, that's very helpful. A 300-pound fullback. I mean,
with 3 tight ends on the field.
It's a third tight end. If we want to run 11, I need a guy who can read vision, right? If I'm trying to put 3 wide receivers on the field, or if I am going 21 personnel, I'm using 2 tight ends.
He's going to make somebody miss.
The 8th, Russell Grimm taught me this. The 8th guy is the running backs guy.
Yeah.
The other 7 is on us, but the 8th one is his. And if you keep running into the 8th one and getting tackled,
we need a new guy.
We need a new guy. Right? Yeah. Or if you don't know where the 8th guy is, and the 8th guy surprises you every time,
right.
We need a new guy. Right? You know what I'm saying?
It's easier said than done.
Easier said than done, but that's the concept that you're trying to go after. And there's enough guys in here that understand that responsibility and have had to do that at the collegiate level. Yeah. So it's not going to be a huge learning curve for them. I think it's a bigger learning curve when you take a guy who's used to I formation football and has been success from that, and then try and make him into a single back offensive running back. Because for Najee, wherever Najee goes next year, he's got to have that lead backer.
A long way for him, right?
Like the Chargers, right?
Yeah.
The Chargers use a lead back. Now, we had that conversation with Greg and Gus Edwards there. I would personally take Najee over Gus Edwards,
sure.
right?
Right.
And they have their pseudo defensive lineman Patrick Ricard type there.
The defensive lineman.
Yeah, I forgot his name.
They used 2 different ones actually.
Yeah. Right. So he would go perfect in that system. And you know what? Najee will be successful. And we can't sit there and say, my God, he's doing so good over here. Good for him.
That's great.
You know what I'm saying? But for our system, That's not what we need. We need a single back that can create off of an H-back motion or a wide receiver motion that also knows where that 8th guy is in the box and can make sure he runs away from that guy or he makes that guy miss based on his schematics.
It doesn't sound like much, but we know the Steelers are going to be a very high run percentage team. I mean, we know that. I mean, that's not a secret.
Yeah.
And for much of the year, they were at like 3.9 yards a carry. They ended up at 4. They have to be at 4.2, 4.3. You know, if you're going to run that much, it doesn't sound like much at all. But over the course of the year, and that many more first downs,
it's an extra 100 yards.
That fewer 3rd and 8s. You know, I mean, if you could get to 4 or 5, that'd be wonderful. With a Fields or something, pitch it in. But
3rd and 3,
you can't be at the bottom of the league.
3rd and 3 opens your playbook up more so than 3rd and 7.
Yeah, right.
And that's the problem. We had way too many 3rd and 6 pluses after running the ball twice.
Yeah. Right.
Right. And also what helps that number, right, is the explosives, right? You know, you want to have a guy that can break
many
away.
80-yarders.
We didn't have many of those. So it was, and we also know how many negatives we had to deal with because of the lack of vision. But you're right. It has to be in that 4.2 and above average when it's all said and done. It must be greater than 4.0.
Can't beat the bottom 5.
No, you cannot be there because
volume running.
Yeah, if you're going to hand the ball off 200 plus times, you better darn sure make sure that you are above 4.2. Yeah, you better be good, and that means you've gotten a lot of tries at it. So why isn't it working? And the other thing that hurt us, we didn't have a bread and butter run play. We did not have one established at all last year.
It's funny. I do a Thursday night show with Merrill Hodge and he always says when things aren't going well on offense, Chuck would say, let's get back to our run game. What is our best run play? And that's where we start.
Yeah,
and then I'm like, Merrill, what's our best run play? He's like, I don't know.
Yeah, Merrill doesn't have one. I take the ball and run north. But it was 12 and 13 trap. Chuck Noll, 12 and 13 trap was their bread and butter.
No, I mean, what was the Steelers in 2024? They didn't really have one.
They didn't have 0. And for us, it was 22-23 double or it was 34-35 base. Those were our bread and butter. When we wanted to wear a team down,
or when things started to get off the track.
It started to get off track. Fourth quarter, 4-minute offense, which we turned into 6-minute offense, 22-23 double. We ran one game. I'll never forget this with JB. We ran 22 double 6 times in a row out of the same formation, no movement, and we did not get stopped. We converted 4 first downs on 6 tries.
Kind of felt like what the Ravens did to the Steelers.
Exactly what the Ravens did.
It's a helpless feeling,
but that's what a bread and butter play is, and that's making sure that you know your personnel. Hey, what are our guys good with? What can they throw anything at the board at us, and we can block it up regardless. You can run 3 down, you can run 4 down, you can run 3-3 nickel, you can run a 4-2 double eagle, whatever you want to call it.
Lombardi toss sweep. I mean, whatever it is,
matter.
Just be
Whatever's
going
to be great at that play, and that was the one thing that I hated, that after 17 games, I couldn't give you an answer.
Yeah. And I will say, I thought the second half of the 2023 season, with a lot more pulling linemen, which also felt fit Najee better.
Yeah.
I thought they were starting to create an identity and weaponizing their offensive linemen. Yeah. And I'm not criticizing the system, but that was working, and we got away from it a little bit.
Yeah, well, and that was also having Eddie Faulkner, right?
Yeah.
Have an actual input into the system, right? Because, I mean, we got to it, and we tried to run the same type of counter system, and we had both our tackles pulling to each other in the playoff game.
Yeah, that can't
goes back to too much on the plate and that kind of stuff. Right.
And also, your guy's not understanding the system, and when you're having cross motion and that extra guy comes in the box and having your guy short circuit, because there is no, like, bread and butter is not meant to have a lot of pulling action. Like, you can have one guy lead block, and for Najee just needs a lead blocker. And that I'm gonna fight that. And listen, if Najee was sitting here next to me, I would tell him the same thing. You need a lead blocker. You need a fullback. Right? Would you agree you run better with a fullback versus without a fullback? Tell me a yes or no.
That's where your eyes go, and that's where you
go.
Yeah, everyone has their strengths and weaknesses. You know,
and there's nothing wrong with it. Because, listen, if you run I-style formation football, he is going to be a hell of a back to have to deal with. Because especially if you have to deal with the fullback and then you got to scrape off the fullback and try and make the play. I don't want to hit Najee.
You're going to fall off
after taking something, not having full speed. But if I'm meeting him full speed and we've done something and I've shot the gap on the backside before he's gotten going, we're in a good place.
You can take some of his decisions off his plate.
Yes.
Follow that guy.
Yeah, exactly. Follow that guy and just and cut off of that. If his butt cheek goes right, you go left. If his butt cheek goes left, you go right. That making it easy, but getting a ball in the backfield and saying we're running zone, so you have B gap, A gap, backside A gap, or you can cut it all the way back to backside C. I'm done.
With
I'm
vision
done.
and
I have nothing else
patience
for you. I have
and-
nothing else for you. But Jalen Warren, you give him that, and he's like, I got you. I got you. We're
and
good.
hopefully the next guy.
Yeah, the next guy. But
fits it, right.
do I think Jalen could have been an I formation back? No, he's too small, right? Because that is something you have to worry about, that lateral, cross lateral. And what was one of the issues Jalen had injury-wise, right? He got chopped down from the side a little bit too much, took a little bit off of his run game. He needs to be the guy that can break you down in the backfield.
Let's get to a break.
Yes, let's do it.
He is Max Starks. I'm Dale Lolley, and here with Matt Williamson as well. This is the Drive Crew with Max. We call it that this week. And
Third wheel. Third wheel.
Oh, you're not a third wheel.
Okay,
Oh,
sidecar.
welcome
Sidecar.
edition. We are live here at the NFL Scouting Combine. It's Tuesday, the first day of all the events. Omar Khan spoke earlier today about a lot of stuff here for the Steelers, but we're going to get to a break. We'll be back with more right after this. And welcome back. I'm Dale Lolley here with Matt Williamson. Max Starks has stepped away for a moment.
He's a popular fellow at
He
this
is a
event.
very popular.
Yeah.
You can't walk through this event without seeing 72 people per hour that know Max.
Right, and he doesn't hide very well.
No, he's very difficult to
He can't camouflage. him,
camouflage.
right,
Yeah.
And sneak around the masses.
He would have to hide behind stuff, and it would
Right.
take big stuff.
Big stuff indeed, like this huge curtain behind us here. Yeah.
So, Matt, we haven't had a chance to talk about some of the things that Omar Khan had to say today. The offensive line with Broderick Jones shifting over to left tackle, as he said today. That's the probable when they start in the first OTA sessions. That's where you'll see Broderick Jones at. Do you feel that will have a settling move on him?
I was happy to hear it. Just because I think the sooner that is declared, the better. And we know he's played way more right tackle than left tackle snaps. But that wasn't the plan in the NFL.
Yeah.
But that wasn't the plan. And whatever I don't know. I mean, neither one is a natural right tackle. So one of them's going to have to learn. And you know what I mean? But I do think the clarity aspect of you're on the left, you're on the right, let's go from here. The sooner the better, because there has been a little bit of ambiguity over the years too. And drafting two guys that have gone back and forth isn't perfect.
Yeah. So if that's the
Do you
case,
think he's happy to hear that? I
Yes.
would assume so.
Yeah.
Okay.
If that's the case, and obviously then Troy Fautano is going to be on the right side.
Yeah.
And that's basically what he said at the end of the season last year when we talked to him on the last day. And I think one of the things that you need to remember. So I'm looking at his prospect grade here. This again, the Lance Zierlein, and on NFL.com. He was a 6'4",
Okay.
Okay, so if we look at this year's offensive line, the top graded lineman is a 6'4".
Doesn't surprise me.
So, by their grading scale, by Lance Zierlein's grading scale,
It's not gospel, but it's a good
not
guideline.
gospel, but
right.
it's a good guideline. Troy Fautanu in this particular draft would be the number one offensive line prospect.
I haven't thought about it in that terms, but that does not shock me because there aren't true tackles in this draft, which should grade higher, like the alts. I mean, I bet Alt had a better grade.
Will Campbell is going to go around the top 10 somewhere.
That's what I was saying. Like, would I rather have the Washington version of Troy or the LSU version of Campbell? I think I'll take last year's guy.
Yeah.
I mean, I think he's more tackle-ish. I think he's a better athlete.
So I think that's kind of what's been lost on people here because he played one game last year, and people I've seen people throw the word bust around.
Yeah, it's terrible.
I've seen we don't know what we have with him. That was a wasted pick. They could have taken Quinion Mitchell or they could have taken Brian Thomas. Yeah, they could have.
And those guys turned out great.
Fantastic.
Right.
But I think
they might have considered it at the time. I don't know.
We have to be open to the possibility, and I'm just saying it's a possibility. Troy Fautanu might be a better pro than either one of those guys.
Oh, it's quite possible, right. I mean, if you told Steeler Nation that you are getting the best graded offensive lineman that's coming out of the draft this year with that.
Sign him up.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
we're getting the number one guy?
And you still have a first-round pick.
Yeah.
I mean, like you're getting that in addition to your picks.
Yeah.
That's the way I think you should kind of look at this. As he's still an elite prospect.
Yeah.
The little we saw of him in pads and doing football things as a Pittsburgh Steeler were good.
I'm
very good, right.
extremely excited about him. So
it wasn't like he didn't belong once he got here.
Yeah. I'm just going to look up Roman Wilson's grade here real quick.
Okay. It's an interesting exercise. Like what are you getting here if you almost look at them like extended rookies?
Yeah, because that's really what they're going to be. It's like getting
right.
2 extra draft picks this year.
Not to mention Lee and Watts.
Yeah, just those.
Right.
So he had a 6.30 grade.
It's pretty good.
Which is pretty good. So a 6.30 grade in this year's draft would put Roman Wilson firmly in the top 10. That was, Jack Betch has a 6.33 according to NFL.com. Jalen Royals, who I like Jalen Royals.
Yeah. Both those guys would be good Steelers.
A 6.27.
Okay.
So in this year's draft, the guys who he would be ranked around at that point, Emeka Ekuba, 6.37. Trey Harris, a 6.34. Isaiah Bond, a 6.33. And Betch is a 6.33.
Yeah, that's a significant prospect coming back in the mix.
Right. That's what you've got coming back. And so you have to look at that. Okay, if those guys were in this draft, if Roman Wilson were in this draft, people would be talking about him as a potential second-round draft pick.
So if you rewind several hours, you weren't on with me, but you were sitting here and you were working, and Trevor Sikkema from Pro Football Focus joined us. And I was really grilling him on D linemen. But at the end, Wes brought up, what about the receivers? And he talked about, Golden and Burden and the top guys. But then unsolicited, he said, but I really liked Roman Wilson here.
Yeah.
He's
a good player. We just didn't get to see him last year because of the injury stuff.
Yeah, and I think people were looking at him like he's a bust too. And we've explained this over and over. I don't think that's the case. I mean, it would have been nice to see more of them, and there probably could have been some opportunity. But I don't think it was – we don't think this guy can play. He has no chance. He's not going to help us. So, add him to the mix too. That's encouraging.
I think people looked at him in particular and, he was healthy for a while and they didn't bring him back. Well, yeah, because he missed training camp.
Mm-hmm.
And he's a rookie.
Yeah.
We saw how difficult it was, for Mike Williams to get on the field after the trade. He's a veteran guy who's been in the league for 8 years.
Amari Cooper,
yeah.
Those guys, Hopkins with the Chiefs.
Struggled to make an impact.
Yeah, a lot of these guys that are new to at that position have a tough time acclimating. It's not just a Wilson thing.
Yeah.
So don't write his book yet by any means.
In essence, in this particular draft, getting those 2 guys back, you're getting an additional first-round draft pick and an additional second-round draft pick.
Yeah, basically. A top 10 receiver and a top 2 or 3 type of O-lineman guy.
Maybe the top guy.
Maybe number 1.
Yeah.
Right.
So, when people say, well, you need to draft offensive line, they got to go draft offensive line. You're getting a first-round offensive lineman back that you didn't have all last year.
Yeah.
I'm willing to –
they're still very high on.
Yeah.
And despite not playing much football yet, has been – both these guys and Lee and Watts, they've been professionals for a year too.
It's basically a redshirt year for them.
They understand. It sounds stupid, but they now have their homes and their apartments and their cars and their route to work and their favorite restaurant.
They know where everything's at in the building, and they know
all the stuff football. They've
sat in the classroom the entire time. When
okay,
I'm learning. They know the offense now.
Yeah, that's how Siamalu handles himself. On game day and prep work and all those type of things too. Okay, I'm a better professional than when I came in the league.
Yeah,
despite not playing.
I just think that it's honestly it's like having a additional day 1 and 2 draft picks this year that you're going to be able to make use of next year, and you get those picks this year.
I also think Lee might be your next Lowry, Watts, Wormley, that guy. Which there's a lot of value to that too. If he's like your 5th guy that plays quality snaps, great.
Yeah, there's a lot to like there, and we'll see what he becomes. But he's 6'5", he's 285 pounds, 290 pounds. We'll see what that turns into. So
obviously there's higher hopes for the first 2 picks, but the fact they had half their draft class was not available.
But when people are talking about the Steelers' draft needs, offensive line and wide receiver. You got 2 of those guys coming back
right.
that you didn't get to see last year. So let's not forget about that. So let's not sweep them away because, they didn't do anything as a rookie.
Sure. And neither one of us is suggesting they're done, especially at receiver. And Omar Khan made that pretty clear that
they're going to go
get a receiver.
Like they're
going to get a receiver, right.
and even Mr. Rooney said that is,
Yeah. Even when we've done our mock drafts and things of that nature, we've gone, well, you have George Pickens. If you lose these guys, and we got to go sign another guy, and then you're still going to draft a guy. Mm-hmm. We've kind of forgotten about Roman Wilson in that regard.
Yeah. I mean, frankly, I think the guys that are most certain will be on the opening day roster are Wilson and Austin.
Yeah.
I mean,
they're going to be there.
Yeah. I mean, I think Pickens will, but there's a chance he gets traded. Everybody else, fill in the gaps.
Right.
Right.
How many
so
are
those
you
two are
going to
be on the team?
Yeah, they're going to be there, and
that's the jumping off point.
What do they bring to the table? That's the question. But again, if Troy Fautanu and Roman Wilson were in this particular draft this year, Fautanu would be highly sought after.
Highly.
Maybe a top 10 pick, and Wilson probably doesn't get out of the top 60.
Yeah.
So,
and I thought Max had a lot of really good stuff, offensive line scheme stuff and what they were asked to do and all those type of things too. Year 2 in a system goes a long way as well.
Yeah,
for everybody involved.
You're adding 2 key players at 2 key positions. I mean, they thought enough of those guys last year to take them in the first and third rounds.
Yeah.
They obviously like them, and they're going to be a part of the process here.
Mm-hmm. And I have very high hopes for Fautanu.
Yeah.
Wilson, I'm excited about.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely. Let's get to another break. He
All
is
right.
the Matt Williamson. I am Dale Lolley. This is The Drive on the Steelers Audio Network. We are live from the NFL Scouting Combine. Max Starks back in the saddle here with us. He will be back for the next segment, and we'll take you all the way through till 5 o'clock here.
All right.
On these very airwaves. We'll be back with more right after this. And we are back. I am Dale Lolley here with Max Starks and the Matt Williamson. And, we are live here at the NFL Scouting Combine. We will be here all week long until Friday. Then we will pack up and head back to Pittsburgh. Max will head back to Phoenix. And, we'll see you again, maybe owners' meetings, I guess?
Owners' meetings. I'll be down. Hey, going to the Breakers, guys. Yeah.
Yeah, that'll work.
Yeah, I'll probably drive down from Orlando. I'll probably see my mom in the process before then drive down and meet you guys there.
Cool.
One of the things that came up yesterday, and there was, I guess, a meeting of the competition committee over the weekend via telephone. Obviously, they'll probably have a meeting here as well.
Yeah.
Mike Tomlin sits on that. Banning of the Tush Push. Yeah. Somebody brought that up. As an offensive lineman, as a purist of the game.
Yes.
What do you think about that play?
If you got it, God bless you. Because, I mean, it's a lineman's dream, right? To be able to get in and create a full-on Spartan phalanx on the football field. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's the shield wall, right?
Yeah,
essentially, that's what it is. You know what I'm saying? Like, being able, as a war history buff.
Without the spears and
yeah,
swords.
no spears and no shields, but, I mean.
Pretty close.
Helmets are close and there's fists there that, act like spears. It's a phenomenal play. I just think, like you said, it's different if one team only has access to it, right? Now, granted, other teams could practice it, but they don't.
We're seeing more.
We're seeing more try it, but it's not
to that level.
Not to the degree of the Philadelphia Eagles. It's a play. It's legal. You know what I'm saying? That's the other thing.
It wasn't legal, though, when you played.
It was not legal. We weren't allowed to get that tight and get the end root hog in that type of way.
I think aiding a ball carrier should be illegal.
Yeah, I mean, I believe it, but I mean, let's face it. I've also, we've done the catapult position before, right? Where, you've turned behind and you kind of just, you take the pancake block.
That's a little different, though.
Yeah,
I mean,
it is.
It used to be illegal when you played because guys, you'd see the, offensive linemen, everybody stood up, and then all of a sudden you get somebody crashing into the back of them, and bad things happen after that, bad feelings.
Well, but it was also more so like we would catch it at the end of runs, right?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? That's where it became.
Wasn't the design.
It wasn't a design from snap type of run. Ours was post-play action. When does the whistle stop, right?
Right.
Because you can't see when the running back's legs actually stop and keep going because of all the the massive humanity that's in there. This from the beginning, I think you need to tighter regulate how it can be implemented. So I think you need to adjust it on who and where, just like the extra point, right, and field goal. Like removing a guy off of the actual snapper's body, right, outside of the framework of the body. I think that could be something where you say you can maybe aid the offensive lineman, but the quarterback can't. You can't push the quarterback through, but you can help a down lineman through as far as root hogging in those moments. I think it has to be refined. I don't think you need to ban it completely, but I think it does have to be tweaked as far as it, just for competitive fairness, right, across the board. Because like you said, we see one team that can really do it and 31 other teams that either don't or they suck at doing it, right? I mean, that's what it comes down to. And we're here to create, not to create disadvantages in favor of one team. We're trying to make it equitable across the board. So I think it can be tweaked. I don't think you need to get rid of it completely, but you do have to change some of I think the legality and the formality of it.
The play itself, I mean, is it all that different from a quarterback sneak? Not really in the grand scheme of things. It's a quarterback sneak. The ones that drive me crazy, though, are when you see the running back. He's 5 yards down the field, and now he's stood up, but they allow the play to continue. Then you go to the game against I think it was Kansas City at the end of the first half. George Pickens catches a ball out on the edge. Guy's tackling him. Another player comes in, knocks his own guy, the would-be tackler, off. They'd already blown the whistle, and George Pickens is running down the sidelines. Yes. If that was a running back inside the box, they would not have blown the whistle dead. No,
they would not have. And that's where I think you have to. That's why you have to have. I hate to say, because I'm not a guy who wants to expand an already ridiculous rule book. You know what I'm saying? Because that's the thing. We're supposed to make this a little bit clearer, but the problem is when you evolve player body types, you evolve skill sets, things, guys are bigger, faster, stronger, human eye doesn't catch it all. Mm-hmm. So I want it more simplistic and just make it easy for us to understand. If his feet stop, ball dead. Feet keep going, ball still keeps going, ball does not get blown whistled. You know what I'm saying? Like, does not get blown dead.
That cut and dry, yeah.
That's cut and dry. Feet stop, play stops. Yeah. Feet go, play still goes. Like, just keep it that simple. And I think that's where we the guy that was on him, the angle with which his foot. No.
And we see it with the quarterbacks. If a guy's wrapped around him, even if his feet are still moving, they'll blow it dead.
They'll blow it dead immediately. Yeah. And it's like, okay, now a quarterback in the backfield of something is a different story, right? Yeah. And so there's too many what ifs and exception to this, asterisk here, comma here, and but, or, and I think just cut and drive. The legs are still going. You can still go. Legs stop, play stops, and keep it at that. And then when we come to the tush push, okay, you cannot push the primary ball carrier, but you can push guys around him, right? You can create the phalanx still. Yeah. You can create that pocket, but you can't push the guy over the top of that, right? I think that would make it a lot easier.
My complaints with it are just as Joe. I just think Joe average fan sitting on his lazy boy doesn't enjoy the play. I don't think it's enjoyable or entertaining in any way.
Well,
it's almost like
rugby. Game, right? The Commander's game.
Where we see it whistled, they're flying over the top.
Right.
4 or 5 times, and they're going to award them the touchdown. And
if I wanted to watch rugby, I'd put rugby on. I mean, it's not.
It's a rugby scrum.
It's a rugby scrum. Yeah. And then the other thing is, and it hasn't happened, and I hope it doesn't. But I thought watching it for the first couple times, I'm like, quarterbacks are going to get hurt. Somebody's pushing me from behind. And I'm meeting all this resistance from, I'm going to get bent. Something bad's going to happen.
Yeah, I'm going to get bent back over right. Yeah, it hasn't because, the body control lean of a quarterback most of the time they've been, Jalen Hurts is strong enough, right?
Yeah,
I mean, he squats
600 pounds.
He squats with Saquon Barkley. Yeah. So, for him, he has a low back, but I'm worried, like, if Kenny Pickett tried to run that same exact play. Tua or anybody.
Right.
Well, they did do it with Kenny Pickett, and I don't think it worked.
No, it did not work. Right. You know why?
That's what people say.
He doesn't have the legs for it.
That's what people say, well, why doesn't everybody do it? Well, not everybody has Jalen Hurts, who has legs like tree trunks.
And I also wondered if it was a Kelsey thing. And it wasn't a Kelsey thing.
No, it wasn't a Kelsey thing because Cam Jurgens also had the capability to do it. And I think, like I said, Joe Burrow, I wouldn't run tush push with Joe Burrow.
No. He get broken in half.
He get broken in half because the problem is the problem when you get here and you get stood up, if that knee is extended and the rest of your body's back.
I think it's a potentially very dangerous play.
That's a season-ending knee injury in that moment because you'll get crippled. Or you get bent back behind and then all of a sudden your running back pushes you while a guy's in your chest. Now you've got low back.
I'm getting pushed from both sides. I mean, I thought there'd be a lot of injuries. And it hasn't been, which is great. But
yeah, because most teams realize the quarterbacks are
like,
nah, I ain't
I'm not
doing
going to do that with my quarterback.
Well, what other teams do, though, is they have a tight end come in and do it.
They run wildcat, right? Or a running back get in there.
Right.
And takes a snap from under center. Yeah.
Yeah, he's less valuable.
Right. I don't want Burrow doing it.
No. I need a guy that, my guy that's on his second contract, we just paid him, $250,000, $250 million. I'm keeping that guy out of that one.
He doesn't need to do it.
Hey, minimum wage guy, come on.
Right in here and take this,
do the dirty work.
Snap
Get this first down.
Get this thing.
Yeah.
It's just, between that, I got used to the new kickoff rule.
Yeah.
I didn't like the new kickoff rule.
I still don't like it.
But I got used to it.
It's just very unnatural.
I understand why they're doing it, and concussions were down this year.
Yes.
Now, was it because of that necessarily? We don't know. We just know the
Or was it because everybody just kicked it out of the end zone and said, we'll just start with 70 yards of field?
Right. Now they're talking about moving the kickoffs back 5 more yards.
So people can't do that.
So people can't do that as easily, and you get more kick returns.
Yeah, because once again, as long as there are rules in this world, there will always be people who will look to break or bend them.
Absolutely.
That's just the nature of human beings.
If you're not
on this
cheating,
earth.
you're not trying.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, hey, the money that was under the table in college is now on top of the table. You know what I'm saying? So
it's not the first time a college athlete got a reward.
Got a reward. It's just different when a guy has a $500,000 car collection after that reward.
Uncle Sam now gets his cut.
Yeah, exactly. Which Florida and Georgia, you see this on the docket. They're trying to make NIL money tax-free to the players.
Oh, wow.
To try and make it more enticing. So I'm like, it's no different than here when we talk about the pro layer. Hey, if you go to Tennessee or Texas or Florida, no state income tax, that's a savings. But now, it's like you're trying to further that. But I think that's one of the biggest things that I look at is, like that compensation is one thing. And like you said, we make decisions on who should do what based off of what you're paid. What's your valuability to this? But I kind of lost my train of thought just now.
Deep down, it doesn't sound like you have a huge problem with the tush push. Then.
I don't have a huge problem. I have a huge problem. My issue comes more with the application, not the actual play itself. Because I love the fact that you can get down and root hog and just drive it forward. But like you said, the push from behind, multiple guys pushing, one has each cheek assignment, so to speak. Yeah. That's where I have a problem.
Why don't we just allow somebody get it?
Well, like rugby, right? You can lift the guy up by his shorts, right, and put him up in the air like that. I have a problem with that, right? You know what I'm saying? Like those are the things. So it's more nuanced than anything else. Because I love quarterback sneaks, man. I love when Ben will call out to quarterback sneaks because I was like, okay, which side is the nose shaded on? That's the way we're going, anyways.
I used to love Brady doing it, who's not big and strong like Hurts or the most physical guy. Just smart, and I hit that hole and I pick it up.
Exactly. Just dive forward and get there. So I love it, and I love the physical nature that it brings to it. But I just don't, like you said, I don't want the additional assistance. Like it's different if it's just one guy doing it, but normally it's two guys.
They got a phalanx behind him.
Yeah, making the phalanx, and then you're wedging him in there. So I like I said, if you move it off and you I can now use the guard or a tackle and push in that way, and quarterback has to make his own way after that. I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
But I think
I'm
the
not
way
big on aiding ball carriers.
Yeah, exactly. So
to me,
I'm with you
should
there.
go back to that rule. Don't aid ball carriers.
Yeah, and listen, I was notorious, in my career, peeling off the pile. Like I loved it. I was like, please stand so I can go. And you can't allow a lineman to launch anymore. I used to launch. Have you watched my film? Oh, we getting that pile up? Oh,
you love the POW inspectors that were.
Oh man, yeah, exactly. Worm burners, man. I'm there for it. I'm there for it. Pick off the whack-a-mole. You know what I'm saying? I love that. I love that play. So so I think that's why I have an affinity towards it. But like you said, it just needs to be changed a little bit and tweaked so that it is equitable for everybody else involved.
I'm sure you wouldn't mind being on that Eagles line. Just drive it down people's throats.
Also, I'm small now on that offensive line.
Close.
Mekhi Becton was bigger than me. You know what I'm saying? So at least, as long as I can say that I was not the biggest, and I'm like second biggest, I'm cool with that. And Jordan Mailata, taller than me. So I get to be number 2 for a time. So I don't stick out as much. I blend in. Except for when I'm standing next to Cam Jurgens.
they may have made you a guard like Becton.
Yeah, exactly.
There's no room with Lane and Mailata all of a sudden.
Yeah,
You're right.
geez, yeah.
Well, let's get to another break here. That's going to do it for hour number 2 here with us. We're having fun.
In the books.
We're just cutting this down.
Here. We get an hour remaining here of our live coverage today from the NFL Scouting Combine. We'll be back again tomorrow, starting fresh at 9 a.m., going all the way till 5 again. But he is Max Starks. That's Matt Williamson, and I am Dale Lolley, and we'll be back with more on The Drive right after this. I am Dale Lolley here with the Matt Williamson. Don't know where Max got off to now, but he might be out trying
floats
to
around.
grab our next guest here. Max knows everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting conversation here about the Tush Push there in the previous segment. We'll see what else comes out of it.
I didn't hear the kickoff thing was being considered going back.
They're going
to they want
potentially
kickoffs.
move it back. They want kickoffs, and they're also talking about the potential of how to because the current rule is you can't attempt an onside kick now before the
I'd love a
start
way
of the
to
fourth quarter.
find around that.
Yeah. Honestly, if you want to run an onside, you're going to have to declare it because
how else do you do
how
it?
else are you going to do it?
I think that's one of the flaws in the new system.
Yeah.
But
they've taken the surprise onside kick out of the game.
yeah.
But if there were a way to still run an onside kick
I don't know why it has
earlier
to be
in the
the
game,
fourth quarter.
I don't know why either.
Why can't I do the opening kickoff I want?
Yeah. Or,
know.
for example, I think in one of the playoff games, somebody scored. Was it Kansas City? Maybe it was in the Super Bowl.
I think it was a Super Bowl.
Right before the end of the third quarter, they scored.
When it was an obvious onside kickoff.
And
situation,
they're still down 3 scores, and they still had to kick off deep because
it's not the fourth quarter yet.
it wasn't the fourth quarter yet. So had to, by rules, you can't do an onside kick until the fourth quarter.
But when you declare it, it's awful hard to recover one.
Yeah.
But such is life. It's not a perfect
Don't
rule.
fall behind.
Well, and the other thing is that what's the conversion rate before we change this, right? You know what I'm
It wasn't
saying?
very high to
It
begin
wasn't
with.
high
No.
to begin with. So we're talking about, what, 10% to 12%? I mean,
Yeah.
it's like, come on now. And like you said, I think it also keeps teams from doing that type of stuff and putting themselves in a bad situation. It's like you're down 3 touchdowns. Like, come on. You need to play better offense.
Yeah.
Right? And you're already giving the team
You're
that's
gonna get
already
that.
been scoring
Yeah.
3 touchdowns ahead of you even better field position than they're already going to get, because a lot of teams have decided we're only playing 70% of the field in the first place.
But we saw it in the Steelers Super Bowl, surprise onside. I wish that still existed.
Yeah, it would be nice, but like you said, it's that once in a while shot in the arm trick play that comes out versus we're talking about week 12. You're playing a non-division, non-conference opponent, and you're down, and you're trying to do this stuff. It's like, okay, this game's already bad. Let's not make this game worse. So you're protecting against the Jaguars and the Panthers of the world from doing
Keeping
that
them from doing dumb stuff.
Yeah.
Yes,
We don't do that in the offseason, though, and we
Yeah.
could see some.
It's not something I'd
Interesting.
stand on the table for either way.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
I do wish the surprise onside was at least an option.
Yeah, or if you say you can't enact it till the second half of games, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can give them a little bit more leeway, or halfway through the third quarter, we can open it up, right?
Yeah.
Once again, open to interpretation. I don't think we take it away, but I think, once again, you can tweak it, right? This has been the first year, and this is not supposed to be a fail-proof. We've put it in. It's perfect all the way,
right.
but there can be adjustments made along the way that can make it a little bit more equitable. Say I'm down 10 points and I just want to surprise them. We're getting out of opportunities, and this team is very good at running and possessing the ball.
Yeah.
Maybe we want to steal a possession here because we're not going to get it on a defense, on an interception or a turnover. So at least try something different. I think they could open it up a little bit more.
Yeah.
The problem is you just have to declare it now, because then they have to line different, and then
Yeah,
the whole world
exactly.
knows it's coming. And
Yeah.
I wish I would have asked when we had Ramon Foster on earlier today, and of course Ramon now a media personality in. Is that the correct term for him now?
Yeah, he is. Personality, definitely. Media, questionable. No.
But he's in Nashville now.
Yeah.
And, of course, the Titans have the number 1 overall pick in this year's draft.
And a new GM.
And a new GM.
With a second-year head coach. I mean, a lot of stuff going on there.
Right.
Now, when we had Greg Cosell on, he said that he feels Cam Ward is a franchise-type quarterback.
A creator, right?
A creator. An elevator.
Clearly,
Yeah,
number 1
elevator,
in this
yes.
class. Yeah.
Yeah.
And yet, I get the feeling that the Titans aren't going to use that first overall pick. Not on a quarterback, and I don't think that when it all is said and done, I don't think they're going to use the first overall pick. I think they trade it.
Yeah, because they need a
more.
lot of help.
Mm-hmm.
Because first of all, yes, you can add Cam Ward, but you got to address that offensive line. That offensive line was garbage last year.
They got like 2 good guys.
Yeah,
right. And they're young.
And it's like 1.5. And they still are in that first 4 years of their NFL experience that you don't – they can still go either way. You know, they could be good this year and terrible the next.
Totally needs rebuilt.
Oh, yeah. So you need that. You still, I would argue, you need a top-tier receiver.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you know, and I think you need an edge rusher, right? You know, so there's so many things that they need. I don't think quarterback, you know, you want to be able to
put
pick
your
that
quarterback
quarterback
into a
out
good situation
and plop him right in, right? Ben Roethlisberger style, right? Everything else is built around,
That's ideal. Yeah.
you know, the team except QB. And so when Ben came in, he was the final missing piece. For Tennessee, there's so many holes that they have to fill. They need volume right now. And so that's why I think you have to trade out of it, because that number 1 overall pick is valuable, especially when we just talked about 5 or 6 teams that don't have a starting quarterback right now for that squad that would be willing to wager the future to get a quarterback, whereas I think Tennessee, new GM, a little bit more of a timeline. Now he's like, well, we can kick that can down the road. If we get everything else in place, then we can bring in the quarterback.
And sorry, you kind of said it. You know, it's a first-year GM, second-year head coach.
Yes.
You would think their seat's not burning hot yet either.
No.
You know, they could probably go another 4 or 5 win season and be fine.
Yes. And get another high-round draft pick again.
Yeah. And end up going back into the quarterback market with a better line and maybe a better receiver, or et cetera. And a lot of people
contracts become available in free agency for quarterbacks a lot better next year.
And if they're stuck there, maybe they do take Carter or Hunter and are fine with it, and that's a building block. But just history, and my hunch is Ward somehow will go first overall.
Yeah, I believe so. I believe so.
Giants will trade up. Raiders will trade up. Jets will trade up.
I was about to say, Raiders are the number 1 team that I look at as we've got to go get something, because we've seen what terrible quarterback play has looked like. Aiden O'Connell, Gardner Minshew, Desmond
Look at our
Ritter.
division.
We're also in Vegas.
Yes.
And the only people who come to our games are the opposing fans.
right.
Exactly.
And like you said, on the billboard.
And division. Pat Mahomes is in our division. Justin Herbert's in our division.
Yeah.
Bo Nix just went off right as a rookie against us. So we need that star power, name power to combat the other 3 that I'm going against in my division, whereas other divisions don't have to worry about that. There's not that large a concentration of quality quarterbacks. I'm not going to say – because Pat's great. Justin was good. Obviously, he took a step back with the morning week system and everything. You know, and it's more run-based, so he didn't really have the numbers that we're used to seeing from Justin. But Bo was a surprise. So now it's like, well, 3 teams got a quarterback, and we're the only one left out in the dirt. Yep. So they have to be aggressive. The Jets have to be aggressive as well.
I don't think Cleveland's in that situation where they need to go get a quarterback either. They have too many needs.
Yeah,
especially
have so many other needs.
They're going to trade Myles Garrett.
Yeah. That's
now they're saying they're not going to, but he's also saying he's not going to play there.
And we've seen what that pressure looks like, right, from other teams. So this is the trend
now. If you put
now.
Ward in Cleveland next year, it would be a disaster.
Oh, it'd be horrible.
It'd be horrible.
I mean, Joel Petonia's talking about retiring. They're going to have to.
You're talking about trying to ruin a quarterback.
Yeah. It would be David Carr-esque.
Yeah, I mean,
if you put a quarterback
in
there now,
right.
You need to go get a veteran that doesn't mind being a meat grinder. Go sign Jameis Winston back again for another year and deal with it as you build. But
they finally are having some draft capital now. You know,
they're not, they're not in cap hell anymore. You know what I'm saying? So I think Jets, Raiders, absolutely.
I would say the Giants too, just because their seed is so hot.
Yeah, I would say you're absolutely right. I forgot about the Giants, and how could I forget? Anything in New York that's not Buffalo pretty much sucks. So all of them need a quarterback, and they're the ones that the Tennessee's looking at like, okay, what can I fleece you with to get more resources?
And I don't think it'll be the Panthers, DJ Moore, Bryce Young trade. That was a haul. I mean, I don't know if you'll get that much for this year.
Yeah,
but you'll get.
Or even
nice
the Mitch Trubisky San Francisco trade, right?
Right. Move up one spot,
and you just absolutely decimated the Bears by that. You know, it's not going to be that, and so I think when you kind of look at it, but it needs to be something commensurate to where they can go back to the well in day 2 a couple of times. Because, like you said, the value is going to be in day 2.
Yeah.
Like, that's where the big movement, big plays are going to be made. It's not in the first round this time because nobody has multiples like they've had in years past. We're like, I got 3 to play with, and they're at the back end. You know, I got Philly's pick or something.
Yeah.
You know, it's not that. Or like last year, the Dolphins lost a pick, so therefore the 33rd pick became even better when we got, the Chicago Bears in that situation.
Pick,
the Porter pick 2 years ago. So it's not like that. So I think, for them it's going to be, okay, how far back in the top 10 am I moving? And then what else am I getting day 2 out of this deal? Because the Titans need volume. They don't need quality right now.
So we could see a situation, and I want to say when we've seen some of those picks get traded in recent years, it's been well before the draft.
Yeah.
It's been like pre-free agency.
Yeah. Yeah, it's usually happened like next week.
Right.
Yeah.
Because they talk about it here.
Yeah, they talk about it here, and they get everything finalized because you have all the decision makers here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it's like, hey, we'll just wait till it seems proper. It's a little lull in the day. Boom, drops in the fax, right? Or email, or I forgot
whatever
what
they
it is
do
now.
nowadays.
Yeah. Whatever transmission is needed through the league office, like send in your request and then send in that, hey, we've agreed on this, both sides, blah, blah, blah. But, yeah, that'll usually happen next week. I don't think this goes to March 12th, and I definitely don't think this happens in April before the draft.
It's not going to be when they're on the clock.
Yeah,
right,
exactly.
Right.
And
So,
then we'll know who the number 1 pick is.
And then we'll know,
in earnest, whoever
we'll have a
trades
really
for
good
it.
idea.
Yeah.
Like I said, I think Cam Ward does go number 1 overall, but I just don't think it goes to
Yeah, because
to
here's the
I'm
thing.
leaning to.
Because Tennessee is not going to stay at number 1 and draft Abdul Carter.
Right.
They're
They
not-
say they will.
if they could
and
move
all
to
that,
3,
but
Yeah.
but then the question becomes, does Cleveland take him? Okay, maybe not. Are you happy with one of the other guys?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, are you happy with – and listen, there's still some good things. Because once again, Cleveland, guess what? Cleveland has a lot of issues.
A lot of
And
issues.
if they went with a quarterback, like you said, they're going to ruin him because they don't know what they have or don't have and how it's going to look. Because
But history says they'll do it anyways.
history says they will screw it up. Yes,
Right.
that's true.
Easy
Even
for
though
us to sit there and be like,
Yeah.
don't do that. But
don't do
they
that.
might
And
do
it's
it.
like, hey, I got to touch it to see if it's hot. I got to touch it to see if
Right.
it's hot. It is hot. My fingers burn.
Like if they take Sanders, I mean, what do you do?
Oh.
I mean, to me, that would be catastrophic.
And that's
Steeler
where-
fans should be like doing a dance.
Oh, God, if they take Sanders, you're like, yes, we're doing it because he has no weapons. He has nothing to work.
He's got no chance,
That's why
right.
I think Shadur's going to be in Las Vegas, right? Vegas does nothing if they don't if
They don't move to number 1.
If they don't move to number 1,
They just
right,
take him.
They just take him, and then they could also address the other mountains of issues that they need, right? Because you lost Christian Wilkins' 3rd game in the season, and you had no defensive interior.
No.
So you need an interior D line. So you can't afford to really give away too many resources in year 1 with Pete Carroll. And I don't think Pete's has that appetite. It's like, hey, whatever falls to us, that's what we take. I think that's how they're going to
Pete's
approach
73 years old. He's not in this for the long run.
He is. He's in Vegas, but he's not at the tables.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
And Brady has some
He
influence.
didn't buy
Yeah.
a house. He's renting.
Yeah, he's renting a house, and like you said, and another good point. Tom Brady's also in there.
Yeah.
And when you're talking about a guy who will see intangibles and late round talent to be able to say, hey, that's the guy we need in here, and he's not necessarily Shadur Sanders or him. That's also another thing to play into it. Let's build everything else out, because I guarantee you Brady wants to have the pieces in place if he's going to commit his name to a quarterback.
Excuse me. I find it so interesting at this point, end of February, there's really 6 teams that don't have a quarterback, including the Steelers.
Yeah.
But the Steelers are the only ones that are good.
Yeah.
I mean, they're a little different than the rest. They're
Yeah.
not perfect, but they're a playoff team. They're a perennial winner.
Yeah.
They're not the Titans, the Giants, the Jets, the Browns, and the Raiders.
We played 5 quarterbacks in 2 seasons and got to the playoffs both times.
Right. It's pretty crazy. Right.
Right. That doesn't happen. Now, listen, Cleveland did it in 1 year, and that was only because of Joe Flacco. But when you think about it, to have sustained success, and also, I know people hate hearing it, not a losing season in 18 years, almost 2 decades of not going below 500. And, yes, for a majority of that, we've had a Hall of Fame quarterback in Ben Roethlisberger. But to do it the way that they've done it the last 2 years, with flux, with new guys, with rookies, with everything.
Playing one of the league's most difficult schedules in each of those years.
And in the toughest division in football. Like, there's something to be said. Like you said, not all these things are built the same.
Yeah.
It's like we need it. We want it for stability and for long-term success, because you can't play the quarterback carousel forever, and we have nobody under contract. You need some stability there. But at the end of the day, it's not the priority, because you're still going to get good play. Now, the problem is, as Wolf will say, we have fat and sassy fans, right? We've enjoyed
Big time,
success, and we want it to look a certain way. We don't want to just get there. We need to
People
have
are listening
a
and say, well, that
presence
doesn't help
there.
me beat the Chiefs. That doesn't help me win in Buffalo. Right.
Yeah, exactly.
I get it. Right.
I get it. But the fact that, you only have 14 of those 32 going in every year, and if you're taking away this 13 out of 31 that have to compete for that, and we're kind of slotting ourselves in there year in and year out, it's like you just want to see that additional push because now you want to see the next step, which is success in the playoffs.
Right.
At least one win.
Well, I want to talk about
And real quick, last offseason was so unique because Wilson fell out of the sky and cost
Yeah.
the league minimum.
Yes.
I mean, just in terms of what you've invested. And Fields was next to nothing, too.
And it gave us a salary cap that we have now.
Right.
To
Gave you the
be
space.
more aggressive in free agency.
that was a rare offseason opportunity.
I want
That was
to continue to touch on that subject in the next segment. We'll do that when we return. He is Max Starks. I am Dale Lolley. That is Matt Williamson, and this is The Drive on the Steelers Audio Network on Steelers Nation Radio. We are live from the NFL Scouting Combine here in Indianapolis, day one of the event. We'll be back with more right after this. And we are back. I am Dale Lolley here with Max Starks and Matt Williamson at the NFL Scouting Combine here on Steelers Audio Network. And, well, guys, I mentioned we were talking about fans and teams being bad and things of that nature. And I know a lot of people say, well, just blow it up and start over here. Blow it up and start over. Steeler fans would not tolerate going 4-13.
No.
They just would not. Getting embarrassed week after week.
Yeah.
Right.
You can talk all you want and say, well, that's how you get a quarterback. Here's the thing. If you won 6 games this year, you're not drafted in the top 10.
No.
You got to be bad to be
historically terrible.
Yes.
Right.
Which we're trying to think of the last time the Steelers went below 6 victories. It wasn't in the 21st century.
It was 1987. They won 5 games.
See, there
And
we
you
go.
got to hope Joe Burrow comes out that year.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
And I was 5 years old when that happened. So just think about what you're asking for, right? Whether it's blow up the coaching staff, blow up the personnel,
Right. Trade T.J. Watt.
trade
Get rid of
T.J.
those
Watt
guys.
away,
Right,
all
right.
this stuff, force Cam into retire, whatever it is. You don't want that type of situation going, right? And especially when you're always in the conversation. Like, it's tough to not be in the conversation. Like, do you want to be the Carolina Panthers right now?
Right.
Do you heck, I'll even go as far. Do you want to be the Arizona Cardinals? Right? And that's a 7-win team.
And it's getting better. It's getting a
it's
little better.
little bit better.
Incrementally.
But they haven't been truly, truly competitive since Super Bowl 50, and that was a one-shot year, right? You brought Carson Palmer in, and you found a guy because he was on the couch, just like Joe Flacco, right? He was on the couch. There's no couch quarterbacks right now to bring in that will give you that magical 1 year.
Yeah.
And the last time was our Super Bowl, 43. We're at 59? You know what I'm saying? Like, we have to think about those things. And people, they say it because it sounds sexy, but you could end up with Josh Rosen.
Oh, yeah.
Easily.
Yeah,
Because you're not getting number 1 overall.
Yeah.
And that
You
guy
know what
doesn't
I'm
always hit either.
And that guy doesn't hit. I mean, we can talk about the Ryan Leafs of the world.
Then you got to relearn how to win.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing. It's everything that was built and the expectations.
And then by that, also, that means you have a young roster. And if they don't know how to win,
right.
you don't have a Cam Hayward and a TJ Watt who could talk to you about
Because you
the
traded
good
them
days.
away.
You traded them all away. You got rid of them. Then you went cheaper and you went younger to
And
make
all
that
their contracts are up at the same time.
Yeah.
And you won't be able to keep them when they're in their prime.
No.
And
Then you're the Jacksonville Jaguars.
like it stuck with me, Dale. On the way down here, we're driving down with Wes Mueller, who hosts a show, of course, with Arthur Modes. And he said, to quote Modes, basically, he's like, 1 year in Buffalo, we won 7 games, and they thought that was like winning the Super Bowl. Compared to, like, if Steelers win 7 games,
the sky has fallen.
The sky has fallen, right.
Exactly.
Like, that's how, it was 20 years ago, but when I was in the war room with the Browns, Phil Savage would say a prayer. And then he'd say, how do we beat the Steelers? That's how we started the war room conversations.
Yeah.
Like, they were striving to build what was already in place. And, yes, you haven't won a playoff game in a while, but that still is the foundation.
Think about it this way, Max.
Right.
The Steelers have not had a losing season since the year you were drafted.
Yes.
So, basically,
21
in
years.
your NFL lifetime,
Being associated with this whole franchise, I've never known what a losing year is like.
Right.
and
Never.
that means the guys in that locker room, there is an expectation like, hey, 6 wins isn't going to be tolerated.
Yeah, we're not
7
5 or 6
wins isn't going to be
games,
tolerated.
You just know that's not going to happen.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the other thing is that you don't know. Like, you have to go back to somebody who's a fan since '87 to actually ask them.
Mm-hmm.
And when we think about it, the roster that we have right now wasn't born. Nobody was born on that roster back when the last losing season was. That just goes to put it in perspective. So what you're asking for is something that is a near historic moment to happen, to be in a position to maybe draft a guy. Because we already talked about it. Quarterbacks don't come out. You look at the preseason, hey, who's supposed to be this? Half of them, like, I'm going to stay in college because guess what? I'm making $3 million.
Right.
I take in this draft, I'm the 4th best defensive tackle. I'm the 4th best quarterback. I'm not making as much as I'm making as being the number 1 guy at this college
I'm not
team
going to be
that has
number
no
1.
cap.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm going to be the 10th pick in the draft. I don't want to do that.
I'm not doing that. I'll stay for another year and wait. And they're kicking the can down the road. So you anticipating that this bad year is going to also culminate with they got to come out and this is the best guy available. And who's going to jump you in the process?
Yeah.
Because let's not talk.
Somebody else can always be worse.
Because here's the thing. Kansas City Chiefs, guess they leapfrog that Arizona Cardinals team to get Patrick Mahomes, and then they ended up having to take Hassan Reddick when they thought they had Patrick Mahomes falling to them. That can also happen as well.
That's what I was going to say. Is I look at the league right now and I see 4 elite quarterbacks. 2 of them happen to be in this division.
Yes.
And Mahomes and Allen. Of course. Chiefs were a playoff team, went up and got their guy a year too early.
Yeah.
The Bills weren't great, but he wasn't the first pick in the draft, and he had a lot of questions coming out
And they
of
were the
Wyoming.
team that traded the pick.
Right.
That the Chiefs used Patrick Mahomes.
And he was wildly inaccurate for a year or two as well. I mean, Allen had a lot of work to do.
But you didn't know what he was going to bring to the table, that he was going to sit down and actually take. Because that's the other thing. When you're doing this mental background check, you still don't know what you're getting. Even after all of the background checks, you don't know what that guy's thinking in his head, and you can't control it.
Lamar, he goes to a quality organization, granted, but he's the end of the first round, and they took Hayden
Almost-
Hurst before him.
Almost went to the second round. Like if Baltimore doesn't jump back into day one, Lamar sits overnight.
And they preferred Hayden Hurst on draft day.
Yeah.
I mean, that's clear. So of the 4, only one of them was a bottom-out team, and that organization's fighting some rough waters right now, too. They also weren't in the playoffs this year.
All that money they put in
Are they
there.
a winning culture? I don't know. For a glimpse there, they look like it.
And here's the thing.
But most of my lifetime, they haven't been.
The 2 of those 4 that we're talking about as being elite quarterbacks still have lost to the Steelers in that time.
Right.
They still haven't consistently like Lamar got 2 consecutive wins in the in the same season for the first time ever since he's been there. Right. You know what I'm saying? So we're talking about it. And Joe Burrow still can't beat the Steelers at home. You know what I'm saying? Like, so these teams are still splitting 50-50 with the Steelers. When we have quarterback flux or aging quarterback, they still can't completely topple us. So we're still a problem for the rest of the AFC North. Exactly.
And here's the thing. I would understand the idea that you blow this whole thing up and let's start over if they didn't have cap space. They have $60 million in cap space, this according to Over the Cap. And the key thing is they have $45,000 in dead money on the salary cap next year.
Talk about being efficient.
Like 10 cents.
It's by far the fewest amount of dead cap space.
That's the
if
most
you start
efficient.
trading away the T.J. Watts and the Cam Haywards, now you're taking on dead cap space and all those things as well. And all of a sudden now your salary cap gets screwed up.
Yeah.
Then you become the New Orleans Saints.
Yeah.
Yes. Exactly. You become Mickey Loomis, and you're like looking for dollars in your pocket. You're picking up pennies off the ground, right? You know what I'm saying? At the grocery store.
They have guys they can't cut.
Yeah.
Because it costs them more money against the cap. Because they've just kept kicking the can down the road. They went for it. You know, the Cleveland Browns this past season, the last 4 seasons have went for it.
Yeah.
And what's that?
And what did it got them 1 playoff win.
Yeah.
And it got them the 2nd pick in the draft this year.
And in this past draft, the Browns picked 54th. That's the first pick they made. The year before that, it was in the 60s. The year before that, it was in the 70s. So they have no rookie contract stars to even build around. You know, now finally I give the Browns credit. They have a ton of draft capital for this year, partially because they stunk, and they earned it. But they traded Amari Cooper, and they added a few other decent picks. This will be the first draft they've had a real draft in 4 years.
Yeah, and even then, now you're dealing with a really, really young roster that you don't know is going to come together or not.
Right.
So you're still not competitive this year.
Right.
You're thinking about 2-3 years down the road.
Which is why Myles Garrett doesn't want to be there anymore.
Yeah, he's like,
Of course.
I'll be 32, and we're going to be still picking in the top 10.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
What are we doing here?
And I'm not picking on the division, but I could see a scenario 1 year from now where Burrow's looking at the Bengals going, I feel the same way Myles Garrett does.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like
there's not enough money you could throw at me.
Right. Like this is not a winning
That's what happened
situation.
with Carson Palmer there.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
He's
Right.
right.
I'm tired of spinning my wheels here. Like, what are we doing?
Yeah. Yeah, let's go and be aggressive, or just let me go. I'll go somewhere else and be
Trade
aggressive.
me for 3 first-round picks or whatever. Right.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah, I can get that for you. Hey, it'll be a nice parting gift for you guys.
Yeah, it's
But,
not like you're
but
getting
let me go to
nothing
the
in return.
NFC South and let me revive my career.
Yeah.
Let me go to Tampa Bay or somewhere. Hey, it worked out for Baker Mayfield, and Derek Carr not so much. But, I mean, you go to a different division that doesn't have as competitive. Go to either of the Souths,
Right,
AFC or NFC. It's wide open. And if you're a quality quarterback, yeah, I want to play in that because I'm like, I know I could be the class of the division very quickly. You know what I'm saying? Like Indianapolis would be an attractive place, for quarterbacks.
Turn this thing around, yeah.
Yeah, because it's like, hey, I got to go against Jacksonville. Houston's going to be a little bit of an issue, and then I got Tennessee, who still doesn't know his way up. Easy division for the pickings. And I put a little contract rider in there. If we win the division, I get a little bump as well.
See, I don't think the Browns look at it this way, but if they are smart and they could really self-analyze themselves, Myles Garrett's doing them a favor because it's time to start over. I mean, for them, they're in such bad situation because of the Watson trade, the worst trade in history.
God,
they have to sell all their assets and start over and hope those guys come together. And I'm never a fan of tanking or trading your best guys and not trying to win. But they're the exception. They brought it to themselves
because
their cap's a
went
disaster.
for it.
Right. Yeah, you went for it at the absolute worst time you could go for it.
Yeah, you push all your chips in, you don't always win.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Listen, Vegas's lights aren't on because of all the winners.
Absolutely. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? You are one of the light bulbs out there. Right now.
The Rams pushed their chips in with Stafford and hit. When the Bucs did the same thing with Brady and hit. But there were 7 other teams those years that did and didn't. Aaron Rodgers with the Jets. Browns time and time again. Saints every year. Most don't.
Yeah, it's no coincidence the 2 teams with the least amount of cap space as we sit here right now are the Saints and Browns.
They're the most miserable organizations in the league.
They can't do anything. They're going to have to cut guys just to get cap compliant in 2 weeks.
And the Watson thing's not going away. I mean, he's guaranteed money,
Yeah.
They finally have drafted
fully guaranteed his contract.
Yep. Garrett's doing them a favor. They could trade him and get stuff and start over. Maybe you can build something in a couple years, but trying to put Band-Aids on this bullet wound is not going to help.
Well, and granted, you'll also have a lot of contracts that will come up in the future right within a 2 to 3 year span. But it's like, if we get a good base in there and we're now not reaching and not trading and sacrificing, I can go and draft. And now I can actually build something for the future.
Rebuild an O-line.
Yeah, rebuild your O-line.
Abdul Carter fills in for Garrett. And it's not the same, but it's
something.
It's something.
But people thinking that the Steelers are in that kind of situation and that they should therefore they're trying to equate
or strive to be in that situation.
Right. Well,
nobody wants to.
The Browns are willing. Myles Garrett wants out of Cleveland. The Steelers should do that with T.J. Watt. No, they're not in the same. They're not even in the same stratosphere.
No. A lot of it's financial.
Right.
They're
once
not
again,
even close.
And to those fans, I don't like to say this often. It's dumb.
It is.
It's plumb dumb.
You don't trade. You don't trade.
You don't know football.
Pieces.
You're just a blind fan at this point.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Because you do. Maybe you did it on Madden. Oh, I did it on Madden.
Yeah, on Dynasty mode. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it's like there's no harm, no foul, right? But this is the real world with real people that you can't control like a video game, and people think that there's. And listen, a lot more access and information is available, right? So people feel more informed, but informed and smart are 2 different things.
Yeah.
Right? And when you're dealing with real money, real issues in this type of situation, it's different because there's no harm, no foul. I can just reset the video game, right? Or I could just not read that article that shows me the rationale. And we can all get information that makes us feel good. That's why we love the Combine, right? There's metrics that you can put in your favor to talk you and convince you into anything. But at the end of the day, does it fit? And that's where hopefully the rationale, listening to informed individuals, like the ones on SNR, and understanding what this is gives you a better place to understand that being competitive year in and year out and being a little bit short of competitive versus starting back at the start line is not where you ever want to go. Like
It's
things have
it's
gone
like chutes
wrong.
and ladders.
Yeah.
You're getting close, and then all of a sudden you go down the chute. And, all right, we're starting over from scratch.
Yes.
Well,
yeah.
and
You never plan to want to hit the chute. You plan
Right.
to hit the finish line.
You want to hit the ladder.
Yeah, exactly. You definitely want
But as
ladders.
you can speak to, and this is a human business, you start doing those things, and then you're like, well, now I finally have a bunch of cap space. I can go get free agents. Free agents don't want to play for you. If
if you suck, nobody wants to come
right. If you're cool with sucking, I'm not going
Yeah,
there
and nobody
unless
thinks-
you way overpay me.
Yeah. Nobody thinks about what kind of message, for example, trading a guy away like T.J. Watt sends to the rest of the locker room, or
Well,
Micah Fitzpatrick, or
Walk up to Cam Hayward and be like, yeah, we just ditched T.J. Watt for a second-round pick. Oh, great. yeah, that'll go over great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and like you're eroding the morale of a team.
Yeah.
Like when you look up to guys, I don't want to see that guy leaving, right? And I get, hey, when you're old, you're old. That's a whole different story. We could talk about the over 30 and the analysis that goes into the
Father
diminishing
times,
return.
undefeated,
Yeah,
blah,
father
blah,
time,
blah, right.
blah, blah, blah. But don't trade a guy that's in his prime and tell me that you're doing
Herbig's big brother, you know, like
Yeah.
you just trade him because what am I? That's my role model, you know,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. That guy helped me in this life.
Mm-hmm.
And another thing, and that's kind of what the Steelers have kind of struggled. They've held on to leaders a little bit too long, but it's never been we've gotten rid of them too soon.
right.
You know what I'm saying? Like that's never been the issue. And
But they've kind of earned it.
Yeah,
too, you know, right?
there's something to be said about that, right? That does put you in cap strap, trying to hold on to a leader that's not, contributing to the level that you want, and that's why your drafting matters. But you want them in the system because of culture and what
Culture
Mike
means so much.
It means so much, and the standards that are set mean a lot, and that's what people don't realize. Like you have to have someone adjacent to that winning culture to then tell that oral tradition, right? How we did history back in the old-timey days, right? You passed oral tradition down.
Right.
And when you have that gap, we've seen it offensively. Like there was
start
a
with
gap
Joe
there.
Green.
Yeah, and the fact that you still got Joe Green around is a blessing, but how many more years is that going to be around? Now you're going to need the Bens, the Troys of the world to come back around here and be like those 70s Steelers, right? You're going to need, sadly, our class,
Sure.
to be around there. Because if the further you get away from those championships, the tougher it gets to try and resemble that. And you need to have some success, but blowing it up and starting back from the beginning, you're not going to get any alumni back. You're going to lose that locker room, right? And then now we're going to be saying, okay, now we do need to go get a new head coach. Now we do need to go get a new GM. And then now we're in a repetitive cycle, and we're looking at the guys right across the state line. Like, are we now Cleveland?
Is that what you turn into? Right.
Yeah, exactly. That's what you turn into. Will we be an expansion franchise that comes back after being hauled off in the middle of the night?
And T.J. Watt said at the end of the year, he's like, those guys that have rings have a different aura about them that come back.
Yeah.
I know I'm not one of them.
I want
to
that.
be one of those guys
Because I see how special it
There's
is.
Mel Blount walking by, like,
Yeah.
whoa.
Exactly.
right.
Yeah, Jerome Bettis walks in. You're like, holy crap. You know what I'm saying? Like, that those things matter. And
There's every generation. Those guys don't
And
remember
guess
Joe
what?
Green, but they remember your generation.
Yeah,
You
but
know,
they also
Ben,
they
and,
know the
right.
mystique of Mean Joe Green,
Right,
right? You
right.
know what I'm saying? And you see him next to championship trophies on the walls when you walk by. Cleveland, how many Super Bowl trophies do they have in their offices?
That would be 0.
Yeah, right.
Hey, how many does the Arizona Cardinals have in their offices?
That would be 0.
Right?
You walk past those 6 every day.
Yeah,
you got to notice.
Yeah, you're like, hey, stand up a little bit straighter. Like, shit, I want to get number 7 up there.
right.
You know what I'm saying? Room looks a little empty.
And it's possible to do it here.
It is.
It's
way easier than a lot of other places.
I had a rough year with the Browns, but I didn't think for one chance it was possible to put a Super Bowl championship out there. Not for 1 minute.
And even for the Jets who have won, but it was Super Bowl like 3.
Right. That's been a while.
It was the year I was born.
That's exactly.
Right.
So it's like, even for them, they have won, and it's like we can't even remember. It's 3 generations have passed since the last time that has been something that's viable for us.
Yeah.
I mean, hell, Rex Ryan was your best coach that you've had in the last 25 years.
In a long time.
You know what I'm saying? So do you want to be that? Absolutely not. I like our position. It just needs to get a little bit better and a little bit better. That's it. You're building on top of already good foundation.
And you have the resources to do it.
Yes.
It's not like you're in a situation
we have
here.
$7 million in cap space.
Yeah,
That's
where
all
you
it
don't
is.
have any cap space, and you're okay. Here, what are we going to do here, guys? We got to do something. We're going to have to get rid of more guys than we add.
Not to mention, at some point, you are going to stumble into not even a Burrow, a Dak Prescott in the 5th round. But if he comes to this team and looks up to Cam as opposed to going to the Browns. Like, what do we do here? You know, like, you know what I mean? Like,
I don't even.
then you
I don't even know where to live, guys.
Right. Right. Like, you're going to stumble into a quarterback.
Yeah.
Anyways, let's get to another break here before we come back and wrap up the show. He is Max Starks. That's Matt Williamson, and I am Dale Lolley. We are here at the NFL Scouting Combine in Indianapolis. We'll be here all week long. We'll be back after this to finish up the show. We're done at 5 o'clock today, but a lot of good stuff, a lot of great guests, and, well, we'll be back with more of that right after this. And we are back. I am Dale Lolley here with Max Starks and Matt Williamson, and we are live at the NFL Scouting Combine here on the Steelers Audio Network. And it's been a fun day, guys. A lot of stuff, a lot of news. Of course, Omar Khan talking earlier today and saying, "Hey, we've talked with the agents for both Justin Fields and Russell Wilson, and they'd like to have somebody under contract by March 12th." That's when the new league year opens and free agency begins. It actually begins March 10th. That's when the legal tampering.
It's a big domino to fall.
I love that term, legal tampering.
Yeah, exactly. Right. I don't know why. Hey, this is where we can talk about it. We just can't act on it. Yeah. Period. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. So, it's February 25th now.
It's soon.
Yeah. It's 2 weeks.
Right.
Yeah.
2 weeks. We're
Combine
going to be.
The dominoes start to fall pretty quickly here, and they want to know where they stand with the quarterback situation.
You need to have somebody under contract in there
because it affects what you do in free agency.
It'd be real nice to have it before the buzzer, without question. And that doesn't have to be Fields or Wilson.
Right.
I mean, that could be Rodgers or Cousins or Stafford or somebody else that's not a UFA to be.
That's the other thing about this, right? The next 2 weeks. We're gonna see a lot of veteran players be shown the door.
Well, and you said it. I mean, does Derek Carr come available? Right, down in New Orleans, because New Orleans has to cut some guys to get it compliance.
Yeah.
There are some teams. What about Trevor Lawrence? Where does he stand with the? Like, there's a lot of pieces in these next 14 days that are just shoes that are going to drop. You go, I didn't know he was available.
Oh yeah.
Just like we did with Russ and with Justin, we didn't know they were available. Mm-hmm. We didn't know the call. So you're going to see a couple of
I don't think we were talking
moves.
about Russell Wilson at the last combine for the Steelers.
No, we weren't. We were not.
Right.
Yeah, we just knew something was going to happen because of the friction between him and Sean Payton, but we didn't know how that would appropriate. And also the compensation. Who was picking up the tab for a majority of that contract?
What's the cost going to be?
Yeah. So I mean, there's still a lot of stuff in these next 14 days. It's going to be really intriguing to see it, and it gets figured out here. This is where it gets figured out.
Teams look at this draft class and they go, okay, can we afford to do without this guy because we think we can get a comparable replacement in the draft.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the Browns will know a lot faster than everybody else about their Myles Garrett situation because those D linemen will be on the field in the next 2 days.
Yeah, sure.
And
they're going to like them.
And they'll know well in advance what we can and can't do and what's possible to figure that out because that's one of those. Jonathan Allen as well with the Commanders. They're going to know.
More and more of those guys every year.
As these guys start to compete in what they do after these interviews, after their measurables come in, after they start competing on the field for drills, you'll start to see it start to fast track. And by the end of it, you'll be at 10 days, and we'll have a lot more answers within the next 8 days about how those things start to clear up before we get to that period.
And, Dale, we do this every day, and we think we have a pretty good beat on things. I think we do too. But, 1 year ago, Fields' name was out there. We knew the Bears had the first overall pick. They're probably going to take Caleb Williams. So we didn't think Fields was coming back.
But at that point, the compensation
that's what I was just about to
still,
say.
Oh, they want a second-round pick.
They want a second and a fifth.
Everybody, you have no idea.
That. Right.
Mm-hmm. You really have no idea.
We weren't right. Right.
And that gets discussed here. The reality of it, because based off of what's available, right? Mm-hmm. Supply, the theory of supply and demand.
And I'm sure they did want a second and a fifth, but nobody was giving it to them.
But nobody, they hung that carrot out here, and nobody nibbled on it. So it's like, okay, well, maybe we thought a lot more highly of this than what you thought.
Yep.
So now we retool, but we know we had to get him out of there. So now it's like, okay, well, what are you willing to give us at that point? Pie in the sky demands start, but then reality sets in very quickly, especially when we see all 329 of these kids start to compete, and you realize, well, hey, I can let this guy go because I know in the third round I'm going to get this guy.
Yeah.
Right? Okay, it makes it a little bit easier. I saw 3 of the guys that I want body type-wise that tested well and are all kind of similar, and I can take either one of those 3 and be happy. All right, bye. Mm-hmm. Let's move on.
And I'm not saying any of them are going to turn into superstars, but Jones from the Patriots, Pickett, Ritter, how all these guys got traded that were starters the year before, young, pretty high picks.
Yeah.
All were on the move. Boom. We're going to get another guy. So there's opportunities we don't see yet.
Yeah, no, there's a lot. I mean, just like, I hate to go back to it because I cover the Cardinals, that's why I can say it. You drafted Josh Rosen at 11 one year, and you went and took Kyler Murray #1 overall the
next
very
year.
following year.
You made that decision like that.
Yeah, you made a decision. You didn't even hesitate. So, stranger things have happened.
Yeah,
is what I'm going
you
to say.
dumped the 8th pick for a second rounder 1 year apart.
1 year ago,
driving it off the lot. Right?
Yeah. So so that's one of the things where we think we know, and we have a good beat as it stands today, as it'll stand tomorrow. But we don't know 4 days from now what's going to happen. We don't know what other shoes going to do. Just like we didn't know before coming in, like we knew right before we came into this, Matthew Stafford, they were shopping his value. We had no clue. Just like Myles Garrett, the first day of Super Bowl, drops that letter that he wants to be traded. Nobody was thinking about that for Super Bowl. We're like, hey, Eagles, Chiefs. Next thing you know, it's a Myles Garrett, speculation show.
Let alone, remember all the Ayuk talk?
Oh, Ayuk.
Nothing happened. Right.
Listen,
like there's a lot of talk.
Every receiver that came available, Devontae Adams and the whole thing last year. I mean, there's things that are just going to happen. And also the agents know when they're going to drop news because they know what their players do.
There's a game being played here, right.
It's cat and mouse. It's chess and checkers being played here, and we're going to see it. We're going to have brand new news tomorrow. We're going to have brand new news
without
on
a doubt.
Thursday.
Something will come out tonight, and we'll be
these
talking
next
about
couple
it
weeks are
tomorrow.
going to be busy.
Yeah, and our Friday show is going to be completely different than the show we just had.
Yeah. Can't believe we were talking about that on Tuesday.
How facetious are you?
Yeah, so I mean that's what this event is about. That's what it's like. I mean, there'll be meetings tonight.
There's such little
clandestine
news.
meetings.
The last couple of weeks are tough for content for us because
Yeah.
everyone's on lockdown. They're not making moves. They're not going to be in the same city. Now they are.
Now they're all. The NFL is here, and well,
we're bringing it to you.
Things will happen.
Yes.
So. Guys, it's been a fun day. It's been a long day, Max.
Yes, it has. You and I. Yeah.
Good day one. Good day one.
But we've had all kinds of wall-to-wall content from 9 to 5. We'll be back again tomorrow with the same format, basically. We'll be going 9 to 5 here on the Steelers audio network. And we want to thank Wes Euler, Jerry Dulac, Rob King dropped by, who spent some time here. Of course, my partners, Max Starks and Matt Williamson. We want to thank Tyler Vittmeyer for videoing here the last 3 hours of
Video
the show.
guy Ty.
You can check that out on YouTube later on tonight when he gets that up there. And we also want to thank C.J. Wolfley and Justin Miller back in studio for logging all these long hours as well. We also want to thank you for listening to this edition of Steelers Nation Radio on the Steelers Audio Network. I'm Dale Lolley. We'll be back again tomorrow.
Steelers football happens here. The Pittsburgh Steelers Audio Network.